Hey guys, Mike from Deepwood Force Will here, coming at you with another video. And this one's one that I've been planning for a little bit after the whole set got released, similar to what we did with the Advent of the Demon King. This is a full review of the Time Spinning Witch, the latest set for Force of Will, third set in Reiya Cluster. So honestly, this set is probably one of the best sets we've gotten in Force of Will since probably Legacy Lost. I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited to go over the cards, and I'll tell you what I think is playable, what I think is not playable, and what we'll see kind of niche play in certain decks, and of course what cards I want to experiment with. So just get right into it. If you've seen the Advent of the Demon King video, you already know the star ratings that I give, but again, 5 stars is like a meta-defining card, something that'll really shake things up. 4 stars is something that's meta-relevant, something that I think is good enough to see play in most of the high-tier decks right now, or even create other decks that will become high-tier, if you'll catch my drift in a bit. 3 stars means that it has potential, it's a good card, but it probably isn't as powerful as some of the 4 stars. 2 stars is something that's probably not going to be picked that much, but might see niche play in certain decks. And 1 star I think is either like total garbage, like completely unplayable, or we'll see very, very niche play in extremely specific, not high-tier decks. So without any further ado, let's get right into it with the first pick. In standard set review tradition, the first card of the set is a common that kind of helps to illustrate a new mechanic. The first one we have here is Imul's Unicorn, also on the inverse side, Imul's Twisted Beast. This is a 2 mana, 1 white, 1 colorless, 600/600 Resonator. Whenever you do Judgment of a Ruler, invert this card, which means you flip it over to the backside if you don't know what the inverse mechanic is. Flips over into Imul's Twisted Beast, which is an 800/600 Beast inverse with precision, which is pretty cool, and when it inverts, you destroy target Resonator with attack less than that card's attack. So it's a fairly conditional destruction effect, paired up with a pretty much vanilla 600/600 body. It's not bad, and it'll definitely see play in draft, and it'll probably be good for cube, but other than that, I think this card won't see any constructed play. It's just a little bit too weak for what it should be doing, but it's a good thing to kind of introduce the inverse mechanic and get you familiar with it. Next on the list is Angel of Hope. This is another one of the inverse cards. It's a 1 mana 200/300 Angel with Flying and Drain. Drain is actually a new keyword in this set that now will symbol skill. That means whenever that card deals damage, you gain life equal to the damage dealt, which actually pairs up very well with its effect down there. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on this card. That's fantastic. This card can snowball out of control. If you have other life gain effects, you can stack those on top of this card's effects to deal even more damage. Really cool design there. And of course, the standard light. Whenever you do Judgment of a Ruler, you invert that card. Angel of Hope turns into Angel of Despair. Persona, no. Danganronpa. It goes into a 400/500 Angel Inverse with Flying. Again, keeping it flying. And when it inverts, you can destroy target Resonator if there's a +100/+100 counter on it. Of course, if you gained life with Angel of Hope, there's going to be a counter on it, so most of the time, you flip this thing over, it kills something, you keep the momentum, keep the counters. The card's really cool. 200/300 that can snowball are pretty good on turn 1, but there's a lot of destruction in the game, so I don't know if this will see a lot of meta play, but 2 stars, it's interesting. Another 2 stars goes to Dr. Jekyll and Miss Hyde. First things first, Dr. Jekyll is a 3 mana 700/800, so stats are pretty good for that cost. The big effect is that you can pay light less to do Judgment, so your Imul Judgment is going to be 1. If you have another light ruler, you can just knock off that Judgment cost. It's awesome. And then whenever you do Judgment, you invert it into Miss Hyde, who is an 800/900, so you gain an extra +1/+1. She cannot be attacked, which is awesome. That's a fantastic little effect there that we don't really see on a lot of Resonators. The most relevant thing that has that ability is Charlotte, I think, and we know how strong that can be. And also, she gives inverse Resonators +4/+4, so if you start amassing the board full of things that can invert, and then you do a Judgment, and you flip everything over, Miss Hyde becomes a massive board swing, which is awesome. So there's a lot of power packed into these cards. Not a lot of staying power on them, unfortunately, except for Miss Hyde's cannot be attacked clause. And for 3 mana, this might be a little bit too much cost for not as much as they do, but there's a chance that they'll see play. Another 2 stars. Next we're on to Escaped Jeweler, the first non-inverse card we see. Escaped Jeweler is a 1-mana 100/100. When it enters the field, you gain a gem of any attribute. That's alright. And you can pay star and tap itself, rest itself, to return it to its hand and rest another target resonator. That effect's pretty cool. It's, you know, infinite gem creation, but on a 100/100 body that doesn't actually gain you any advantage or move your game state forward, it's a little bit too weak, especially because you have to pay for it, so it's not even that good to play on turn 1. Honestly, this card will probably stand by the wayside. It's not even a panda. I find gem synergies with pandas tends to be better than gem synergies without the pandas, so this card's probably just a little bit too weak. 1 star. Another one of the inverse cards. This is actually the first inverse chant that we see. False Piece is... But the main thing with the inverse chants is that when you play an inverse chant, instead of putting it into the grave, you remove it from the game on its inverse side, and then you can play the inverse side from the removed area, which is really cool, because essentially you tack on every inverted chant that has an inverted side gains kind of like draw a specific card on the back of it that you have to pay for later, which is awesome. So essentially what you get with False Piece is a quick cast, 1 mana, you gain 400 life and draw a card, then remove it from the game. Deadly Pox on the other side is kind of the opposite effect. Your opponent loses 400 life and discards a card. So for essentially a total of 3 will, 1 white, 1 black, 1 colorless, you gain 400 life, you make your opponent lose 400 life, you draw a card, and you discard a card, all for essentially 1 card, which is a lot packed into 1 card like this. The side False Piece is fantastic, I think. But I think the Deadly Pox just doesn't really do too much for the 2 mana cost that it has. Like, it's cool because it's an extra card you can kind of sink extra will into, but it probably would have been a little better if it had quick cast and you could play it on your opponent's turn after getting the False Piece. But again, the cards aren't bad. Tacking on 400 life, draw a card, draw a specific card is pretty cool. So there's a lot of value to gain out of it. 2 stars, might see a little bit of play in IMUL decks. Next up we have Fierica, Honorable Thief. This is a Resonator Human with a really weird anti-discard effect. When this card is put into a grave from your hand by a spell or ability your opponent controls, put this card into its owner's hand and gain a gem of any attribute. That's such a weird effect, but it's kind of interesting, because if your opponent is playing something like, as we just saw, Deadly Pox, where they can choose the card that they discard, they'll just choose Fierica, add her back, gain a gem, they retain all their advantage, which is super cool. And she's also a 600/600 for 2. Definitely not bad stats. You can tap her to gain a gem of any attribute if it doesn't share an attribute with another gem you control. So if you control a fire gem, you can't gain another fire gem, but that's cool because you could just find whatever you need for what you don't already have. And she's got an expensive addition destruction effect where you banish 5 gems, but if you're trying to amass gems with Panda, you might have 5 lying around somewhere that you don't want to use for, you know, Tigris's really powerful J-Ruler side effects. So she's got a couple of outlets there. Not a bad card. Again, I don't find human gem support as good as Panda gem support, but out of all the humans that do have gem support, Fierica is probably one of the best. 2 stars. Next up we have Fierica's Expedition. This card, there's going to be a trend that you see here where if there's a card that's based on the top card of your deck or the top X number of cards on your deck, I'm normally going to knock off a star or 2 depending on what the card does, just because randomized effects like that, where your game plan is entirely based on what's on top of your deck, that you most of the time don't even know if it's on top of your deck or not, tends to make the game a little bit less skill-oriented and just kind of a luck-based game of the draw. Fierica's Expedition is a really good example of that. You reveal the top card of your deck, you gain X gems of any attribute, where X is the total cost of the card revealed this way. A lot of the time, if you're playing Panda, you don't want a lot of heavy resonators in your deck, you don't want a lot of heavy cards, you want to keep your game plan pretty light. Again, this is a 1-star card, Fierica herself is a 2-star card. Oh, sorry, a 1 light card, and then 2 light for Fierica. Honestly, this card probably doesn't have a good spot in any current gem-based acceleration decks, which is where you want to see it. If there's a gem control deck, this could see some play, where you've got like heavier resonators in the back, but Expedition's probably just way too weak for the current state that the gem decks are in. So 1 star for now. Next we got another one of those chant inverses. This one is Flourishing Hope and Burgeoning Despair. Flourishing Hope is a I keep saying 1 star. 1 light light chant with quick cast. that says target J Resonator gains this card cannot be destroyed until end of turn. Seeing that says J Resonator is pretty good actually. That's a decent clause if your opponent's trying to like play out a game where they're just trying to kill off a big J rule that'll kill them next turn, and you just have the 1 mana open for Flourishing Hope. You can really set them back. So that part of the card's interesting. And then Burgeoning Despair is a 3-will quick cast card on the back that says target player banishes 2 Resonators. Both these effects seem like they'd be really good, and of course Flourishing Hope might see some play in like really J-Ruler heavy decks, but I think the cards have a little bit too much of a niche application to really see a ton of play. Burgeoning Despair is obviously a very high value card that you get essentially for free when you play Flourishing Hope, but a 3-mana card that only removes 2 resources your opponent has for like 2 will more, you can just play Eternal Recurrence or something. Again, the card's not bad, but it probably doesn't have enough impact to really see play currently. So, 1 star for now. I hope this card changed my mind, because I do love the Inverse Chance. Next up on the list is Gemhammer Panda. Gemhammer Panda actually is very interesting, being a 3-will 800/800 that gains 2 gems of a single attribute. It'd be way cooler if it was 2 gems of any attribute, because then you could kind of fix to what you need to get, but gaining 2 attributes isn't too bad. The effect to gain +4/+4 as long as you control 10 or more gems is completely irrelevant, because you're never going to have that many, because you're going to be using them for effects, so that's pretty irrelevant. So unfortunately I can only give Gemhammer Panda 1 star just because it's a 3-mana 8/8, which the stat line's fine for what it is, but it really doesn't gain you any advantage on board. Gaining 2 gems is good, but it's not good enough for this card to see play. We have enough expensive pandas as it is, enough pandas that gain you gems and draw cards, enough effects that do the same thing, so Gemhammer Panda really doesn't have much place right now, so 1 star for now. However, that doesn't mean that all pandas are bad, because Gem Mallet Panda is insane. This is probably the best panda card we've gotten right next to Rose Quartz. Gem Mallet Panda is a 1 light 100/400 panda. When it enters the board, you gain a gem of any attribute, which means if you're playing Tigris, you get a gem of any you get a light gem, and then a gem of any attribute. You can tap him to banish a gem. Produce a will of that attribute shared with the gem banished that way. So depending on the gem you make with him, depending on the gem you get from Tigris, and the gem you choose with Tigris at the beginning of the game, you have so much mana acceleration there of almost any, sequence you need. And also you can tap him, banish 3 gems that share an attribute, and you produce 2 will of that attribute, shared with all the gems banished this way. Definitely not as value-oriented as the first effect, where you just kind of get a 1-for-1 gem for mana. This is a 3 gem for 2 mana, but at the same time, it accelerates you past that point. So if you start amassing light gems, you can use 2 of them, play out a free Rose Quartz, and then a bunch of other stuff, and there's so much this card does. And because it's a tap effect, you have, again, multiple times to do it. This is essentially the Panda Sacred Elf, but also the fact that Rose Quartz recovers your pandas at the end of the turn means that you can produce her will with him, recover him, and then have another tap to produce more will. It's insane. Like, there's so much value packed into Gem Mallet Panda. I'm going to be experimenting hard with Tigris. A lot of the time, if you guys saw the Tigris deck that I was playing Corrupted Panda because it was the only 1-drop panda we had. This is such an insane card. I'm probably going to be playing both of them, and I'm going to be trying to turbo out Rose Quartz as soon as I can. This card's awesome. 4 stars there for me. Next up, that's a sour note to come after a 4-mana card. Julora is a 2 light chant, no quick cast. Gain a gem of any attribute that target resonator gains +2/+2 for each different attribute among all gems you control until end of turn. It's a turn-long buff, doesn't have quick cast, can't really do it in the middle of battle. Your opponent can play around it really easily. 1 star. Jewel Step is it's a 1 light chant with quick cast. Return target non-magic stone, non-J ruler entity you control to its owner's hand. Then you may banish 3 gems. If you do, put this card into its owner's hand as it resolves. So it's a card that lets you, double up on your enter the board effects, which is fine, I guess. It's 1 mana, it's a quick cast. It's not the worst thing in the world, but having it need 3 gems to add it back to your hand is just ridiculous. It's so much loss of tempo. I can never see this thing seeing play. 1 star. Karmic Retribution. This is a really cool card, actually. This is a 1-mana quick cast. Choose one. Destroy target non-resonator with no ability. You'll see that phrase coming up in a couple of other light spells. They gave light another kind of identity in this set, where light's now the one that erases abilities, which is awesome. And then destroy target non-magic stone entity you control, then draw a card. So say you have like synergy with being sent to the graveyard. This is a 1-mana quick cast way to deal with it, get that synergy, and then draw a card out of it. So it pretty much cycles you if you're trying to gain advantage from your own stuff. So the card's really cool. It's got a lot of value packed into itself. In draft, this card's actually fantastic because there are so many cards that just are vanilla beat sticks, basically, just like stats on top of no effect. If it has no ability, just Karmic Retribution and it's gone, which is awesome. So this card definitely will see a lot of play in draft, and we'll probably see a little bit of niche play in constructed formats, depending on what cards we see and how well the rest of the light identity works. So 2 stars. I hope this card proves me wrong and gets more. Continuing on from kind of the first card we talked about, where it's like a thing that's introducing the inverse mechanic, Knight of Hope and Knight of Despair are a 1 white 400/400 and a 800/800 on the inverse side. Totally vanilla cards, and when you do Judgment of a Ruler, you invert it. So it goes to its Knight of Despair side, you get an extra bit of stats, but having to stick this thing and then having to Judgment next turn to get a +4/+4 buff permanently, which is pretty cool, but it's not impactful enough. 400/400 is a fine stat line, though. Definitely will see a ton of play in draft format, but in constructed, I doubt you'll see it. 1 star. Light Castle and Dark Castle. Both of these are actually really cool cards. Light Castle Palace of Hope is a 2-will edition, excuse me. Same invert this card when you do Judgment of a Ruler. That's what's shared by like all the light spells. Light spells, yeah. When it enters the field, you also put 2 +1/+1 counters on each resonator you control, so you get to get a mass board buff of +200/+200 for 2 mana. That's pretty solid. It's not the worst thing in the world. And they're in the form of +1/+1 counters, which synergizes with a couple of other cards that work off of those +1/+1 counters, which is cool. And then on the invert side, when Dark Castle inverts, you put 4 -1/-1 counters on each resonator your opponent controls. I don't know if you've played Welser at all, or any of the board-wide debuff spells, but being able to just toss -4/-1/-1 counters on a bunch of resonators, bypassing barrier too, those things stay on permanently. That is such a fantastic ability. Dark Castle is such a cool card, and it's basically almost like a board wipe when you Judgment, depending on, of course, the ruler you're playing, but it's really powerful, and I could see this card giving a lot of value. Essentially, it's giving you a +600/+600 advantage over your opponent for the total card that it is, where it's like +200/+200 from the counters you get, and -4/-4 from the counters they get. It's a huge deficit between the cards, and it definitely is a very powerful effect, so check out this card. Don't sleep on it. It's probably going to be cool. Another one of the additions that we have is Life-Stealing Altar. Jeez, I can't read. Again, same inverse effect whenever you do Judgment, invert this card. Whenever a resonator you control is put into a graveyard from the field, you may pay 1. That's not any specific attribute, it's just 1. If you do, you draw a card, which is awesome, because it's extra mana sink if you're trying to make value trades on your opponent's turn by blocking with certain things. If you have extra mana left over, you can just draw your deck out, which is fantastic. And then Soul Returning Altar is actually fantastic on that side. When it inverts, you put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your field rested. Already a great start, because Life-Stealing Altar is 1 light will, so you basically it's basically a free card when you invert it. And then you get the ability to banish a resonator and give a target resonator -4/-4 until end of turn. Targeted -4/-4 buffs aren't really the best, but at the same time, this also interacts with things that get effects when they leave the fields, when they're put into the grave, so that's pretty cool. This card, definitely not as powerful as Castle, but I still think it'll see some niche play as like a 1 or 2 of edition, so I'm giving it 2 stars. I'm pretty hopeful for this mechanic, and I'm hopeful for the fact that this card just kind of pays for itself in spades, which is great. Next up on the list is Magic Transformed Warrior, the only golem that actually doesn't synergize with with Pandora at all. It's we'll go into that for a second. First of all, it's 5 will for a 12-12. Those stats are pretty average-ish. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. You mobilize up by banishing a gem, which is crazy. And whenever it attacks, for each different gem attribute of the gem banished to play this card's mobilized cost during that battle, it gains the following effects, where the light effect is plus 500 defense, fire is pierce, blue is flying, green is first strike, and then darkness is plus 5/0. All those effects are pretty good. He gets extra little buffs, but again, you have to be playing gems with it. You have to banish the gems for it. He has to survive a turn because he doesn't have swiftness on any of those effects. Why didn't they give fire swiftness? They would have... whatever. He gets pierce. He's just a little bit too slow, and by a little bit too slow, I mean a lot too slow. Again, the Panda deck right now is pretty aggressive. You want to be playing smaller stuff. You want to be swarming the board with Pandas. A big golem that gains some effects if he stays on the board is not worth it. So, 1 star. Mephistopheles. This card is awesome. I really, really love the design on Mephistopheles. I think this card has... If you look at the backside of Mephistopheles, you see the exact wording that Abdul has, where resonators into the field under your opponent's control don't cause their own abilities to trigger. This is what I think Abdul probably should have been, instead of being just an early game board setter. But either way, Mephistopheles is a 3 will, 2 light, 1 colorless demon with 800 attack and 800 defense. Whenever you judgment of its ruler, invert this card, yada yada yada. And J resonators your opponent controls enter the field rested. That's such a sick ability. That's it's so cool, because a few things. Obviously, it stops things with swiftness. It stops things that are trying to use their tap effects on your turn. Sacred Elf is definitely a big example. Melfi is a huge example too. Just, oh my god, there's so much value packed into this. And then on his inverse side, he's a 1,000 flyer. That's great. He gives a permanent -2/-2 buff to your opponent's board. Great. And he has, again, as I mentioned, the Abdul effect, where enter the board effects don't trigger. That's so much value. Basically, Mephistopheles on the front side is better against activated abilities. Mephistopheles on the back side is much better against automatic abilities. So you pick and choose the matchup you're doing, choose whether or not you want to Judgment your ruler, choose whether you want to Judgment your ruler, then play Mephistopheles. There's so much multi-level thought put into this card that I kind of adore it. And a last thing I want to mention that probably nobody else will mention about this card. From Return of the Dragon Emperor, Demon Leader, Demon Commander Eligos, the 4-mana 8/8 with flying, says that you can revive a demon with 3 cost or less. That's Mephistopheles, so you get to recur this guy too. I really love this card. Giving it 3 stars for now. It's pretty expensive for what it does. You need to really set it up and build a deck with it in mind, but at the same time, it's just so much power built into it that I can't give it anything less than 3 for now. Hopefully this thing sees play. Hopefully I can be wrong and this will be bumped up to a 4-star in the future, but Mephistopheles, everyone, it's awesome. Miscalculation is a 1 will light chant with a quick cast that says destroy target attacking resonator. Obviously this card's fantastically powerful. It's a 1 will destroy something, but it's only for resonators, first of all, which is a little bit linear, especially when we have a lot of really powerful J-rulers right now. It's only reserved for attacking resonators too, which kind of sucks because this card is purely defensive right now. When you really want to be offensive, you can't use Miscalculation. So, excuse me. A card like Zero's Magic Light's probably a much better choice, especially like if you're playing a light deck that's trying to go on the aggressive. Zero's probably your pick as well, unless you're doing like weird things with Lumia. But this card is a little bit linear, a little bit constricted, but it's still a very cheap way to deal with aggressive boards, so 3 stars on that. Panda Medium, this is part of the Panda support we're seeing, even though it really doesn't synergize the Pandas all too well. It's a 3-mana 8/8, again, stat line's fine. Whenever you do Judgment, yada yada yada. And you can tap it to remove a target card in your graveyard from the game. What does that accomplish? Well, let's look at Possessed Panda, who's 1,000,000 with some of the most terrifying artwork I've ever seen in my entire life. This thing is a fuel of nightmares. That's again 1,000, no other effects besides tap it, put target card from a removed area that was removed by this card into its owner's hand. This effect is so restrictive, so slow. There's really not much value that comes out of it. It's not just tap it, put target card from removed area into your hand. It's target card only specifically removed by itself, which it just sucks so much in comparison. So I don't see this card seeing any play whatsoever. It'll be cool in draft just because you can kind of get back your stuff and retain value, but I highly doubt this will see play. 1 star. Panda Performer, 3 mana, 5/10, 500,000. Panda Resonator. Whenever it attacks, you gain a gem of any attribute. That's pretty cool, but it's a very slow gem gain. And also, you can banish a gem, switch the attack and defense of this card until end of turn. Again, not really the best support. It's very reliant on sticking on the board a turn and then being able to attack. There are cards that are just much better for that, like even Gem Minister Garnet from Ancient Knights, that when summoned you gain a gem of an attribute and you draw a card, which is just such higher value than this card, I would say. And that card doesn't see play, so Panda Performer I highly doubt will see play. 1 star. And now onto the big lady herself, Princess of Fleeting Hope and Imul, Princess of Despair. Holy crap, Lumia's former self is awesome. She Judgments for 2 and energizes for both light and dark, because she's light on the front side, dark on the back side, kind of like your inverse resonators. Hey, flavor! For 0 mana, she can recover target resonator, but you can only play that during your opponent's turn and only once per turn. So she's an extremely defensive front side, which is cool, which is absolutely appreciated. Having defensive abilities for free is normally much preferred for game balance and game design than offensive 0 mana abilities. What's up, Reflective Rain? So that's pretty cool. Her backside, she's Imul, Princess of Despair again. She's a 300/300, which is probably the lowest, some of the lowest stats we've seen for like an offensively based J-Ruler. She comes with Flying, which is awesome. She comes with Imperishable, fantastic. And she comes with Drain, so if she can continue to stick on the board and keep dealing damage, she'll keep getting that life back, which is great. When she enters the field, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put a non-enchant card with a total cost 3 or less from among them into your field. You may invert that card. Now that's a really important fact, because she's not limited to being able to put limited inverse cards into the field and flipping them. You have your choice of anything that costs 3 or less, which is great for the mana cost being 2 to Judgment her. Already getting a little bit of a benefit to it, but you are not restricted to anything aside from having to not be a chant. If you're playing here, you're probably playing a bunch of Resonators too, a bunch of pretty low cost, high impact Resonators. That's fantastic. And they put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Cool. This is one of the only look at the top cards and choose one effects that I'll probably not write off as pretty terrible, just because hers doesn't have that many restrictions on it. All you really need to do is make sure it's a Resonator edition with total cost 3 or less. That is not a hard condition to fill at all, so I see that happening a lot. And then for each inverse Resonator inverse entity you control, sorry, she gains +3/+3. So if you amass a board of like additions and Resonators with inverse, you bring out Imul, she's a 12/12, she starts swinging with Drain. You get a lot of value out of it, which I find fascinating, and also the fact that she has multiple synergies with your inverses, because when she Judgments, you invert. When you Judgment, you get her Enter effect, where you choose something from the top of your deck. If it inverts, you invert it. So there's a lot of multi-level play on there. I think her game plan is a little bit linear though. She doesn't really have much synergy with the inverse chance, which is, I think, the strongest part of the inverse mechanic. But she does have a lot of value built into her, and if we didn't see cards that actually had a little bit of imperishable hate in this actual set, I would see her being much more powerful. But for now, 3 stars. I feel like a lot of people are going to experiment with her, which I highly recommend. She's super cool. Next up is Relief Aid. This is actually one of the 2 or 3 cards in this set that actually have pretty much the same effect, where you put target Resonator from your graveyard into your hand. With Relief Aid, if you put a Panda back in, you gain a gem of that attribute. The card's very low impact. It really doesn't advance your board state. It doesn't have quick cast, so you can't like use it as a mana sink kind of thing. You have to plan ahead for it. At certain points on turn 1, it's probably useless because you don't have anything in your grave. These kind of effects are really normally not too good. You'll remember from my Advent of the Demon King set review, I said that the Magic Crest of Darkness wasn't that bad of a card, just because, again, it's the same exact effect. It's 1 mana to add something back to your hand, but the fact that it also advances your game state as well, sir, made it powerful. This card doesn't have that. It gains you a gem, but almost everything in Panda now gains you a gem. Panda himself gains you a gem, so I think this card's just too slow. 1 star. Sacred Knight of Atonement and Dark Knight of Conviction are a really cool idea, in my opinion, but the execution was just a little bit too weak. Sacred Knight of Atonement is a 4 mana 9/9 with quick cast. That's pretty cool, I guess. Kind of reminds me of Glorious, and Glorious was obviously an awesome card when it came out. Still sees mild usage in some decks. So whenever you judgment, blah blah blah. When it enters the field, you prevent all damage that will be dealt to it until end of turn. The theory behind this card is that you want to be playing against somebody who's being a little more aggressive. You play Sacred Knight, he takes no damage, you block with him, you block like a 20/20 coming at you, and you deal no damage. On the next turn, you flip him over with your J-Ruler. He becomes 1,000/1,000 with precision, and whenever this card attacks, target J-Resonator gains -2/-2 until end of turn. That's a little bit on the weaker side, I would say. He only gains +100/+100. Precision is a nice keyword, but not the best keyword. And just being able to give one thing -2/-2 once during that turn really isn't that impactful, especially going from turn 4 onwards. So Sacred Knight and Dark Knight are a little bit too slow and not impactful enough to see play. 1 star. Separation of Fates. We were talking about how these cards were going to be in the set, and yeah. It's a 1 mana quick cast chant with target J-Resonator loses all abilities until end of turn, draw a card. Having this with quick cast means that if your opponent's trying to play activate abilities, you can chase to them. They have to play the activate abilities before that card loses all of its abilities. You can get rid of something's flying, you can get rid of something's swiftness, you can nullify keywords, it's so cool. And another big thing is that this is actually imperishable J-Ruler hate, because it says target J-Resonator loses all abilities. That includes imperishable. So this card's unbelievably strong. Again, it doesn't really do anything besides making it easier for you to deal with things, making it your opponent's plays a little slower, making your opponent's plays a little bit weaker, but it's also got a draw tacked onto it. So this card will probably see play either as like a 2 of in the main deck or like a 3 of in the sideboard, depending on your matchup. So I definitely say with 3 stars to this thing, it's awesome. The Jewel Princess. This is the first really good destruction effect associated with gems. She's a 2 mana 1/1, so the stats are atrociously bad. She's also a fairy tale, which is very weird. When she enters the field, you destroy target rested Resonator, and then you gain a gem of any attribute. So Light always has been something that kind of deals with rested Resonators. Something like the old Lumia spell, I forget what it's called. It's been so long since that card's seen play, but it's basically that on a 100/100 body for 1 less that can't target, that can only target Resonators, but also gains you a gem. So the fact that it has built-in destruction for rested Resonators, it makes it usable, of course. Again, I say Panda Synergy tends to be better with gems than any other race with gems, so the gem ability is just a little bit weak, I would say, but she's got a place in certain light decks. Also, 2 stars. Treasure Knight Panda is a 3 mana 500/500. That's already not looking too good. He's a panda though, so hey. He gains +100/+100 for each different attribute among all gems you control, so the maximum he can be is 1,000/1,000. You can pay 2 to choose an ability for each different attribute among all gems you control, from Swiftness, Precision, First Strike, Flying, and Pierce, and he gains those abilities until end of turn. So he's essentially a 5, in his best case scenario, he's a 5 mana 1,000/1,000 with Swiftness, Precision, First Strike, Flying, and Pierce. That's only if you control all 5 different gem colors. I highly doubt you will, so 1 star. White Sacred Beast. This card's awesome. This card is basically the nullification spell we saw before, the Separation of Fates, on a 600/600 body for 2 will. So that's premium stats, being able to make a Resonator lose all abilities. The only problem with this card is that it doesn't target J-Resonators, so it doesn't have that ability to remove Imperishable, but you can just nullify a Resonator that's giving you trouble, swing at it. The 600/600 body and the Beast Tag are actually pretty awesome. So this card I definitely would seeing some play in a light deck based off of this mechanic. Synergizes with Karmic Retribution, that'll kill something off that doesn't have any abilities, so it's 3 mana, play a 6/6 that kills something. That's already pretty good. So, seeing this card, I definitely think this card will see some play, so give me 3 stars for now. That's everything for light. Moving on to fire, we've got the first one, Ancient Impact, which is a 8 mana chant. If your J ruler is the Dusk Girl or Scarlet the Crimson Beast, it can't be cancelled. Jesus. And this card deals 2,000 damage to target player or J Resonator. This is your bomb spell if you're playing the Dusk Girl or Scarlet the Crimson Beast. Excuse me. The only problem I see with this card is that because the Dusk Girl and Scarlet are such offensively based cards, and the fact that you're playing such a high tempo deck, and the fact that your J rulers are so good, you're normally not going to make it to 8 mana. This card probably won't see any play, so for that I give it 2 stars, but the fact that it is such a big, uncancelable destruction of your opponent means that there's a chance it could see play. Princess Martial Artist is a 2-will 7/7. Jesus, I need to stop coughing. It's a Dragonoid. When it enters the field, you remove 3 strength counters from your J ruler. If you don't, he enters the field rested, and he comes with Fire Breathing, where he pays red to gain plus 100/0 until end of turn. Conditional 7/7s are never that great. These 2 Fire Will. Fire Breathing has always just kind of been a little bit weaker in Force of Will, unless it's tacked on something like Lancelot. So, this card probably won't see play. 1 star. Combat Loving Dragonoid is a 4 mana 4/12 whenever this card attacks against plus 400 until end of turn. And whenever a resonator your opponent controls is put into a grave from this field, you put 2 strength counters on your J ruler. A regular 800, 1200 4 is normally fine, but having a conditional with like a really, really weak destruction effect for your opponent's resonators is just... it's way, 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 way too slow, way too low impact. This card will not see play. 1 star. Dino Calling Demon is actually kind of cool, not gonna lie. It's a 3-will 7/7, so the stats are a little weaker, but when it's the field, you search your deck for a dinosaur and put it into your hand. There are some cards that synergize with dinosaurs being in your hand, but some of the better ones are ones that deal with dinosaurs being in your deck, so depends on, you know, the play that certain cards see, depends on this play that certain rulers see. Being able to search out the dinosaur you need for next turn, because there are a couple of like 4 and 5 cost dinosaurs. Dino Calling Demon is pretty interesting, so 2 stars. Good see play. Dino Rider is a 6 mana 14/14, that's pretty big. Whenever it enters the field, it deals 600 damage to each other resonator. That's very powerful. If you can get it out earlier than turn 6, normally it'll hit a bunch of smaller creatures to be able to do that. And whenever a resonator dealt by this card is this turn is put into a graveyard, he gains swiftness until end of turn. So if Dino Rider kills anything on that enter ability, he could just swing at the face with 14/14. That's a lot of power built in. Especially with cards like Dino Awakening, Dinosaur Surfacing. That's the one. That's a 5-will card that puts a dinosaur from your field into the deck, or lets you search a dinosaur, whatever. Being able to put Dino Rider into the field directly from the deck for a 1-will discount is great. And the fact that if you get it out early enough and do that early enough, it'll deal 600. With Lumia, you can swing with it immediately after doing that, flash it back in, deal 600 to everything again. You can get a lot of value out of Dino Rider, so I see this card having some minor impacts on the game if you can find a way to cheat it out. So I'll give it 3 stars as a potential great pick. Domesticated Dragon is a 5-will 1200 with flying, and as long as you have no cards in hand, it gains Fire Breathing for +2. That's very, very weak for 5-will. It's not very impactful, and it's a very conditional effect to even be able to get stronger. So, 1 star. Dragon Aura is a 2-will quick-cast battle art. As an additional cost to play this card, remove 2 strength counters from your J ruler. Put 10 strength counters on your J ruler. This card doesn't do anything. 1 star. Keurig already does this on its front side. Ferocious Attack is a 2-will quick cast battle arts. Does additional cost to play this card. Remove X strength counters from your J ruler. Look at the top X cards from your deck. You reveal a Resonator and put that into your hand. If the revealed card is a beast, this card deals damage equal to its attack to target J Resonator. So, again, conditional off the top of your deck effects, I'm not a big fan of. The fact that you can deal some damage to an opponent, the beast tag being pretty relevant among a lot of cards. But most of the time you probably won't be able to deal the damage, and most of the time you're going to miss it and just kind of draw a card for 2 will. And however many strength counters you just pulled off your J ruler, it's really not worth it. 1 star. Fictitious Fire is a better Callous Blaze from the last set. Callous Blaze was literally deal 600 damage to target player or J Resonator. Fictitious Fire is the exact same thing, except also if you have no cards in hand, it deals 800 damage instead. Strictly better Callous Blaze. Kind of on par with older 2-will burn effects. Could see play, 2 stars. Flameclaw Sabertooth, 3-will, 9/5 with first strike. Pack filler, this card won't see play. Flying Dragon on Mount Hell. It's a 2-will, 4/7 flying. That's already decent stats. Those are not bad at all. But also you get to remove a strength counter from your J ruler to gain plus 500 attack until end of turn, but you can only do that once per turn. A conditional 9/5 if you're playing Keurig is fantastic, actually. Flying Dragon has the potential to deal a lot of damage to your opponent really quickly. This could see some play, so I'm giving it a 3-star rating right now. I hope to see a little bit of aggro come out of Keurig with this card in mind. Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm. Quick cast, choose 1. If the card is awakened, you may choose up to 3 instead. Destroy target dragon, or deal 500 to a Resonator, or deal 400 to your opponent. And then the awakening is to remove 5 strength counters. So this is a combination of a bad Hellflame, a bad Memory to Memoria, and a bad Susanoo, if you guys remember back to Reiya Cluster, all in one card that you can use with Keurig. The card is just too limited for what the effects are. It can have 3 effects built into it, but honestly, removing 5 strength counters is probably better. You're probably just better off flipping Keurig and doing that anyway. Dragon Palm just seems a little bit too weak. The Dragon Destruction thing is really, really niche, and I don't think we'll see enough dragons for it to see play. 1 star. Hero's Bracelet is a 4-will addition with a 3-will bestow cost. Bestowed Resonator gains +4/+4, Swiftness, Barrier, and Precision. This card is unbelievably slow. Will not see play. 1 star. Bill's Martial Arts Tournament. This is the card that synergizes with it. Target a Resonator you control. Your opponent reveals cards from the top of their deck until they reveal a Resonator. Destroy that Resonator if its attack is less than the revealed Resonator's attack. Otherwise, search your deck for a card named Hero's Bracelet and put it into your battlefield bestowed to the Resonator, shuffle the deck, and then your opponent shuffles all cards revealed this way into their deck. So first of all, you target a Resonator you control, your opponent reveals cards until they reveal something, so you get kind of, it gives you knowledge on what your opponent has, which is cool, I guess, but it's not that great. You destroy your target if its attack is less than the revealed Resonator's attack. If you're playing this early in the game, you're basically just paying 1 will to destroy something you control most of the time. And the upside is getting +4/+4 Barrier, First Strike, and Precision? Barrier, Swiftness, and Precision. This card is very low tempo for what it does. Completely RNG based. You can't control what your opponent's going to be drawing unless you're using a card later in here, but you probably won't be doing that. So, either way, this card will not see play. 1 star. Hollow Flame Shadow is a 1-will 100/500 with null. This card becomes a 6/6 with Swiftness. You're going to want to play this thing on turn 1, and on turn 1 you're not going to have an empty hand. I highly doubt you will ever see this card. This card's a fantastic top deck, at least. 600/600 with Swiftness if you're just pulling it off the top of your deck and you have nothing in your hand. But it probably won't see much play. 2 stars for the fact that it's a pretty good top deck, and also some decent Cthulhu support, actually. Omni Ultra Dragon is a 3-will addition. Whenever a Resonator with total cost 2 or less enters the field, this card deals 600 damage to it. Basically, you're just playing an auto True Blade of Spirits with this card. A lot of the time, and that counts as entering the field from anywhere, even if it's like a token. You'll be able to blow up elves as they come into play. card's got some cool niche play. I don't think it's going to be like a top pick, but I think it's going to be an interesting card, probably for sideboard for red decks, so 2 stars. Big boy himself, Reiya. Unfortunately, Kirik's abilities were a little lackluster when they were revealed. He keeps the same effects that he had before, same judgment cost, except his seal abilities, where you remove 2 strength counters from him to look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You reveal a battle lords from among them and put them into your hand, and then you put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. The fact that you put the rest of them on the bottom of the deck in any order actually is an anti-synergy with his flip side, where you reveal the top 7 cards of your deck by removing 7 strength counters, which is a lot, actually. Again, top 7 cards of your deck, you put a dragon from among them into your field, and then put the rest on the... Oh, they put them into the graveyard. I didn't even realize that. That's pretty awful. And Kirik gains +1000/+1000 till the end of the turn. Again, that's a God's Art, so you can only use it once. So if you miss the dragon on that side, you don't get much. +1000/+1000 is cool for 1 will. That's a lot of value there, but it doesn't stop him from getting killed by J-Ruler Destruction anyway. So unfortunately, Kirik did kind of get the short end of the stick on his sealed abilities. So 2 stars for our boy right here. Hopefully somebody finds a way to break him. Mad Scarlassadon is a 3 will, 1000/1000. When it enters the field, you discard a card, and if you have no cards in hand, it has precision. It's okay. it's not a great card. 3 will, 1000/1000 is a good stat line. Discarding a card of your choice is fine, but the null effect is just a little bit too weak. I don't think this card will see play. 1 star. Martial Arts Competitor. This card is actually somewhat interesting. It's a 3 will, 800/800 with swiftness. Yeah, it's unconditional swiftness on a decently statted Resonator. 2 stars. It's going to see a ton of play in draft formats, and might find its way into Dragonoid-centered aggro decks. Piali Ellie, if I can ever pronounce her name right, the Flaming Fist, is actually really cool. She's a 500/500 for 2. When she enters the field, you put 2 strength counters on your J-Ruler. You can remove a strength counter to give her +2/+2 until end of turn, but you can only play that up to 2 times per turn. So automatically, even if you're not playing Reiya, she's a conditional, like, 2 mana 700/700 on 2 turns, or 900/900 on 1 turn. Being able to stack those out is pretty cool. Because it's an enter effect, she synergizes with Lumia. We'll see a lot of cards that synergize with Lumia in this set, so that's really cool. And her Awakening is that you can pay 3. When she enters the board, you search your deck for Piggy, Hull's greatest hero, Pig, and put it into the field, then shuffle your deck. Those are all fantastic effects. If you're into the late game, you can just get some extra value by pulling Piggy out of the deck, and you're saying to yourself, 3 stars, and you're saying to yourself, Mike, who's Piggy? Well, Piggy is the best red Resonator out of this entire set, and probably the best red Resonator we've gotten since Snow White, probably? Yeah, that sounds about right. Piggy's fantastic. Piggy is a 2 will, 1 red, 1 colorless, so you don't even have to, like, commit yourself to red. As long as you're splashing red and you can play him. He's a 5/7, stat line's fantastic, 700 defense is awesome because it can survive a bunch of stuff. When it's the board, you put 2 strength counters on your J-Ruler, so he automatically pays for his effects when he comes into play. You can remove 2 strength counters, give the target Resonator swiftness, that includes himself or anybody else. Same thing, but with flying. So, essentially, Piggy is Persea's ruler side when she was not banned in every format. On a 5/7 Resonator that just can affect the whole board without having to worry about stones. If you're playing a ton of strength counters, say you're playing Kirik, you can just give your board a mass swiftness. That's crazy. Because he comes with his own because he can give himself swiftness, if you're playing Lumia with him, you move 2 strength counters from Lumia, you give him swiftness, you swing for 500, you flash him back in, you gain strength counters again, and you can do it over again, or give him flying next time you swing with him. Piggy has so much value built into him. This is probably one of the best designed and one of the coolest red Resonators we've seen for a long time, and he's adorable. So, please know that I'm going to be playing Piggy Lumia for a little while. We're already experimenting with it. Piggy's just, he's so good. He's so good. 5 stars. 5-star card right here. First 5-star we're going to reveal. And then Piggy's Child sucks. No, it's a red Resonator with 200 attack and 400 defense. he can't be attacked as long as you control Piggy, and you give another beast +2/+2 by tapping it. It's low impact. It's meant to synergize the Piggy, but Piggy just does its job better without having to worry about adding extra stuff onto it. So 1 star. 5 stars for the flavor text though. Oink oink, back at you. Red Fang Allosaurus is a 5 mana 13/13. That's a weird stat line. We don't see that almost ever. With Bloodlust and First Strike. So flavor text can't stop, won't stop, might stop. Oh my god. Again, this card doesn't do anything on the turn that it's played. On 5 will, you really need to be able to... On turn 5, you need to have impactful Resonators entering the board. So Red Fang Allosaurus is just a little too slow, 1 star. Scarlet's Vision is a red chant. Total cost 3, target attacking J Resonator you control against +400 until end of turn, and then it deals damage equals to its attack to the J Resonator with the highest attack among J Resonators your opponent controls. So whatever thing is the biggest on your opponent's side, you gain 400, you deal your attack to it. However, if your hand is empty when you're playing this card, instead of dealing it just to that one Resonator, you deal it to all Resonators your opponent controls. So when you have no hand, you're basically playing Scarlet's Vision as a board clear. That's awesome. Scarlet's Vision is a fantastic card. A little bit situational because the card needs to be attacking, and you have to have no cards in hand for it to be as good as it is, but 2 stars for the sake of it being a very interesting board clear. Probably one of the most interesting ones we've seen in a while. Selection is a 2 will, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. If you can discard a beast this way, put 5 string counters on your J Ruler. This card, unfortunately, probably won't see play just because we have cards that are like 2 will, draw 2, without having to discard something. We have Traveling Trader, which is a 1 will, draw a card, discard a card, that gives you a body too, so if you need to stack your grave, you'll play that. If you don't need to stack your grave, you'll play the better draw cards, so... And 5 string counters on a J Ruler if you discard a beast is meh. Plus the beast you're going to be playing is Piggy, so you don't want to discard that. Piggy's amazing. Don't select Piggy. Play Piggy. 1 star. Spirit of Mount Hell is a Spirit Resonator. 1 cost 300/300. When it's put into the grave from the field, J Resonators you control gain +2/+2 until end of turn. Uncontrollable buff effects are never really that great, so Spirit of Mount Hell is not that great. 1 star. Twin Dragon Claw, for when you wanted to play a bad Hellflame. As an additional cost to pay it, remove X strength counters. This card deals X 100 damage up to 2 target Resonators. You can't target J Resonators. Is worse than Hellflame because it's also 4 times the cost of Hellflame. Almost the exact same effect. Will not see play. 1 star. Ultra Dragon Flame Sphere. Besides having like the coolest name, that's such a cool name. As you play it, you may rest a card named Ultra Dragon Shooting Star. Spoiler: Ultra Dragon is a 3 cost Resonator, 3 red. If you do, you may play this card for free. This card deals 1,000 damage to each J Resonator. Another spoiler, Ultra Dragon Shooting Star is a 1,000/1,000, so this will also kill it. So it's essentially a 3 mana board clear if you have Ultra Dragon, and a 5 mana board clear if you don't. It's also not a guaranteed board clear because it's only dealing 1,000 instead of just saying destroy. But it does deal to J Resonators, which is cool. So Raid Gut's a pretty interesting board clear, but I don't think this card will see any play. 1 star. And here's Ultra Dragon, Shooting Star. This card is fantastic. It's a 3 will 1,000/1,000, already premium, like above premium stats with flying. Only problem is that you have to commit to playing red to play him. He comes with Barrier from Water and Darkness, 2 of the most essential pieces for removing things aside from maybe Gale Force and green. That's the only thing he really has to worry about. He's also a Dragon Guardian. I don't remember if Guardians have any support at all, but if they do, he's a Guardian. Whenever a Resonator enters the field under your opponent's control without being played from your opponent's hand, so say if it's cheated into the board from like an extra deck or a graveyard, this card deals 2,000 damage to it. So, what does that include? It includes tokens, it includes something coming back into the field from Lumia's Flicker effect, it includes cards that are revived from the grave. Shooting Star will demolish them all. it's like, that effect just looks nuts. Tacked onto such a huge body, Shooting Star is going to be a fantastic card for really like heavy red control decks if we can make those happen. Unfortunately, we haven't seen red control work a lot, so I don't know if this card will see a ton of play. Also, if it's sent to the grave from the field, you discard a card at random. A delayed discard effect is totally fine for what this card does. That's barely even a maintenance cost. So, 3 stars. This card is awesome, and I hope that it creates a new archetype. And that's it for Red Resonators. Red got some really, really cool stuff this set. A lot of very good aggressive stuff. and a lot of really good strength counter synergies, which I like. But now we're going to move into what a lot of people were super hyped for, especially me being on Team Shayla with Mr. Jeff Finnegan. If you're watching this, Jeff, Team Shayla, I'm going to give some love to right now. First up, we have Biri Biri Bar. Biri Biri Ball. That's Japanese onomatopoeia, I believe. It's a 1-will blue chant with quick cast. You rest target resonator, and if the weather is thunderstorm, this card deals damage equal to that resonator equal to its attack. So it's basically a single target light bomb if you played Hearthstone, and it's a quick cast rest a card if you're not trying to do you know, thunderstorm shenanigans. It's way better as a thunderstorm card, and for that I gave it 2 stars. But the card's a little bit simple, but a really cool design-wise, especially for Thunderstorm Synergy, which we'll see coming up. Dr. Mermaid was a surprise to me, because this card wasn't spoiled at all until the full set spoilers came out. I looked at it, I was like, I kind of wrote it off at first, but then I'm like, wait, that's a 2-will 4/7 that can remove damage from water resonators and recover a ruler if it's water. What kind of rulers can do tap shenanigans? Oh yeah, Flute! So you can tap Flute for will, use that will to play a Dr. Mermaid. On your opponent's next turn, you tap Dr. Mermaid to recover Flute, and before your next untap step, you tap your Flute, draw a card. So Dr. Mermaid brings up a lot of really interesting synergies. Removing damage from water resonators is awesome, because if your opponent's trying to get rid of a big water resonator that's in the way and they keep sending little things into it, you're like, alright, Dr. Mermaid, recover all the damage off of it, whatever. It's really cool synergies, and I think Dr. Mermaid is fantastic. So 3 stars for that. She's got a lot of really cool little synergies. Giant Rabbit is a 5-will 1,000,000. Oh, exact same stats as Captain Hook. This better be good. When it enters the field, you put target resonator on top of its owner's deck. 1 star. King of Thunderfish. This is one of the first ones that was spoiled for the Thunderstorm mechanic, and it was a big spoiler. King of Thunderfish is a 5-will 1,200/1,200. Whenever it attacks, it deals 200 damage to each J resonator your opponent controls, so extra little token destruction is always good. Whenever it deals damage to a J resonator, rest that J resonator. It doesn't recover during the recovery phase as long as this card's in the field. So when it attacks, you deal 200 damage to everything, all of them rest, and they can't be recovered. And the last effect, if the weather is thunderstorm when he enters the field, you search your deck for Mega Thunderfish and Thunderfish and put them right into the field. Mega Thunderfish, if it's a thunderstorm, gains swiftness and has that rest effect, I think. I don't remember, it's been a long time. And Thunderfish just kind of has that, if something is attacked by it, or if it's sent to the grave, you give something can't recover. So there's so much can't recover synergy. Giga Thunderfish is like a massive board shutdown in a resonator that pulls out other resonators as long as Thunderstorm is happening. This card's fantastic. So 3 stars, definitely going to see a ton of play in Shayla. Next up is Keys Corkscrew, which is the funniest card. It's a 3-will chant. Search your deck for a card named Keys the Wise Dolphin or Keys the Electric Dolphin, who's going to be spoiled next up, and put it to the field. Then shuffle your deck and gains swiftness and precision until end of turn. And then end of turn, you return it to its hand, to the hand. So what does this card mean? It's a 3-will that gives you 2 different, essentially 4-will resonators. It's pretty fantastic. So you get the discount on them, put them into the field, they gain swiftness and precision, so you can use them for attacking your opponent's face, or even clearing, and at the end of the turn they return to the hand. So it's almost like you paid 3-will to deal damage, remove something, and then draw a card, essentially. So Corkscrew is awesome. 2 stars. Because I think that it's probably a little bit too niche to see a lot of competitive play, but I'm going to experiment the hell out of the world with this thing. And then we have another gem, Keys the Electric Dolphin. It's a 4-will 1,000,000, stats are fine, and then this card cannot be blocked as long as the weather is thunderstorm. Holy crap. So this is an unblockable 1,000,000 if you're playing Shayla. That's super rough, and I think it'll catch a lot of people, surprise lethals off guard. So, yep. Keys Electric Dolphin is awesome, just make sure it doesn't get hit by Shooting Star when you cheat it out of the deck. Lightning Cave is a really, really interesting addition. This is one of the first things that was spoiled when we started hearing about Thunderstorm mechanics, and it's actually a great card. First things first, it's only 1 will, so having a 1 blue addition is awesome. Non-motor J Resonators lose and cannot gain swiftness and flying. That's actually huge, because not only does it target J Resonators, and losing swiftness and flying are just fantastic things when you're trying to face down aggro decks and kind of control your opponent out a little bit. You can tap it to make the weather rain. That's an okay effect. But you can also tap it to create a thunderstorm if the weather's already rain. So if you're on Shayla's ruler side on your turn and you just tap this to gain thunderstorm, but if you need like a rain synergy on your opponent's turn, you can tap this, make the rain happen, and then get that synergy going. So multi-level thought built into this card. It's really, really well designed. 3 stars. Definitely will see play in very control-oriented thunderstorm decks. Lightning Dragon is interesting, to say the least. It's a 4-will, 15/15, so the stats are huge. This is a big, big resonator. It's got flying, which is awesome. It's a dragon. You can cheat out with Keurig. But the main clause is that this card cannot attack unless the weather is thunderstorm. That's a pretty interesting thing. Again, you're going to be able to create thunderstorms with multiple effects, which is fine. But the big thing is that it doesn't say this card can't block, so it's not like Mobilize. And because it can't block, and because it can block even when the weather is not thunderstorm, it'll probably see some play as a big defensive tool, like a big wall for your opponent to get over. So I give the card 2 stars for that. I don't know if it's impactful enough to see like a ton of play, but I think it's a really well-designed card. Lightning Phantom I think is bad though. Lightning Phantom is a 3-will 7/7. The stats are already a little poor. You can pay 1 to make the weather rain. And you can pay blue to make the weather thunderstorm only if the weather is rain. This is just strictly worse than almost every other thunderstorm generation card we have, so it won't see play. 1 star. Lightning Shield is an interesting little card. 2-will, quick cast, target J Resonator gains plus 800 defense and barrier until end of turn. Plus 800 and barrier is a very good, defensive tool, obviously. But if the weather's thunderstorm, it gains 1 damage is dealt to this card by a J Resonator. This card deals that much damage to that J Resonator. So it's kind of the same effect as Berry Ball, where Berry Ball is the one that just like automatically deals the damage. With Lightning Shield, you have to have a Resonator out, you have to be able to block with it, and once it blocks, or once it's blocked or attacked, if the weather's thunderstorm, you can kill something off with its own attack stats. It's probably a little bit too situational, a little bit too slow to really see play, so just 1 star on this one. Lonely Moon Were Rabbit is a 2-will 500/500. Not super interesting there, but it gains +4/+4 as long as you don't control another Resonator. 2-will 900/900s are pretty solid, because at 2-will normally the most amount of damage player deals is like 800, so that's pretty cool. It's not very fast, so I don't think it'll see much play, but if you're playing a very heavy blue control deck, Lonely Moon Were Rabbit's a really good choice if you're running a low Resonator count. So 2 stars on that. Lunar Prophet is a 3-will 7/7 Were-Rabbit. When this card enters your field, look at the top card of your deck, you may put it on the bottom of your deck, and then draw a card. So you get kind of like an extra mulligan just for this draw, but if you see a card that you don't like, put it back on the bottom, and so you draw like the exact same card off the top, it feels terrible. You don't really get much choice in the matter when you're drawing, and I think that there are just other cards, even cards in the set, that just do this card's job better, so 1 star. Magic Electric Warrior. This probably is the best golem, period, out of all the golems we've seen. Why? Because it doesn't just have Mobilize support. Magic Electric Warrior is a 2-will 800/800, which is already, far above premium stats. It's got Mobilize Blue, and this card is mobilized and gains whenever this card attacks or blocks rest target J Resonator, as long as the weather is thunderstorm. So if you're playing this guy out in the thunderstorm, and you're starting to swing in, and you have effects that will let you generate thunderstorm both on your turn and your opponent's turn, this guy just gets so much value out of it. He's a huge body, he rests J Resonators. Being able to rest J Rulers is unbelievable on something like this. So I could see this card seeing a ton of play in Thunderstorm decks just because of how versatile he is. Obviously he's got to stick on the board to really gain that value, but at the same time it's going to be fairly easy to stick him down there with his premium stats that he's got. So 3 stars there. Definitely a huge threat in Thunderstorm builds. Mefina, Thundercloud Wizard. Mefina is a 2-will 6/6 mermaid. If a spell or ability you control would change a player's weather, that player's weather changes to Thunderstorm instead. I don't think we've seen any other weathers besides rain, but any rain effect turning to thunderstorm instead is fantastic. I think that also applies to, yeah, it'll apply to Shayla's front side, which is awesome. Shayla's front and back sides. So being able to just have thunderstorm turned on for whenever you need it, Athena is fantastic for that. So 2 stars there, definitely a good choice if you're trying to really embrace the thunderstorm mentality. Mermaid Researcher is a really weird pseudo-synergy card with mermaids. She's a 3-will 7/7, which is already pretty weak. When she enters the field, you choose a race. You're probably choosing mermaid? I don't know, man. And then you can tap her to give something +2/+2 if it shows that race. This card is slow and terrible. 1 star. Oh, Raiju. Raiju's cool. Raiju is a 3-will 6/6 with swiftness. Doesn't sound great on paper. It's also a beast, which is kind of cool. But if the weather's thunderstorm, you may pay 2 less to play it. So it's a 1-will 6/6 with swiftness, as long as the weather's thunderstorm. You have a lot of effects that let you generate thunderstorm pretty well. Unfortunately, the only reason that I couldn't rate this thing higher than 3 stars is that the best time to play would be turn 1. Unfortunately, turn 1, because of, spoiler, Shayla has an ability where you can either put a thunder counter on her, or remove a thunder counter to make the rain into a thunderstorm. Unfortunately, there's almost no feasible way, unless you like really try to force it, to put Raiju out on turn 1 with swiftness. But either way, going past turn 1 into other turns, having a way to just throw out a 1-mana 6/6 with swiftness is fantastic. So that's a 3-star card. Rebellious Soul Ayu is crazy strong. This card is awesome. She's a 2-will 6/6 with 600/600 with flying. She's another Soul Resonator, so she actually automatically works with old Ayu. You have another discard outlet. The OTK becomes even more relevant. When she enters the field, you gain control of target Resonator with total cost 1 as long as she's in the field. If you're going first, you play a 1-drop, your opponent goes, plays a 1-drop, you play Ayu, you steal that 1-drop, you have all the tempo. That's it. That's awesome. That's sick. And then, of course, her second effect that she only gains if you're running Ayu, the Lunar Swordswoman, Ayu Shaman Swordswoman, is that she gains tap, become copy of target J-Ruler your opponent controls. Except it doesn't become a J-Ruler, it's still a Resonator. Basically what that means is that she basically just copies the J-Ruler stats, God, what else? Stats, abilities, God's Arts. You basically just steal everything from your opponent's J-Ruler, and that's not until end of turn, so I'm pretty sure as long as it's in the field, you keep that J-Ruler's abilities and stats. That's sick. That's the first time we've seen a card actually interact with copying abilities like that, and I'm glad to see it on this wonderful, wonderful interpretation of Ayu. 4 stars there. This card's sick. Sea Serpent. It's a 4-mana 1000/1000 that can't be returned to the hand. It's slow. 1 star. Shayla. Alright. So here's our main Bela. This is why we're Team Shayla. Shayla keeps all of her effects, except her second effect is that her hidden abilities now are that you can choose either to give her a thunder counter once per turn, only on your turn, or you can choose to remove a thunder counter to make the weather thunderstorm until end of turn. Both fantastic effects, great for thunderstorm synergy. You pay 0 to make your weather happen, so that's great. Shayla's flip side, you get the Thunder Parasol, which literally just says the weather's thunderstorm until end of turn by paying 0. You can do that as many times as you want per turn. If your opponent tries to change the weather, you're like, nope, we're changing it back. So that new Sherry card that we'll be looking at doesn't even affect that. And the God's Art, you remove 2 electricity counters from her that you generate on the front side, obviously. You destroy target J Resonator, and you rest all Resonators your opponent controls. Oh my god. That's a really, really powerful effect. Shayla gets some fantastic tools for control, for anti-aggro, for just dealing with J-Rulers. That's something that Blue never has. Blue never deals with J-Rulers. This is the first time we're seeing cards that interact there. 3 stars on that. I think she'll see some niche play. I don't think she'll be top tier, but I think she'll be a top contender, and she might be able to take people by surprise. Shayla's Adventure is a 3-mana draw 2 cards, which is already at a deficit when we've had 2-mana draw cards before. Meh. And then you can put an addition with total cost 2 or less from your hand to the field. It's kind of too conditional, I think, to see play. There's so much that has to go right for this card to see value. 1 star. Shayla's Battle is the weirdest battle spell I've ever seen. It's not even a battle spell. It's a control spell that gives value. So it's 2 will, quick cast, return target resonator your opponent controls with 1,000 attack or more to its owner's hand. So really specific things that have to be met. But if you do that, you draw 2. So it's removal and draw for 2 will for a really conditional removal effect. I think this card could be completely insane depending on how the meta is. Right now, I don't think there's a lot of things that have 1,000 or more attack, but if something does get buffed, you have a way to clear it, so your opponent has incentive not to buff their stuff up. I don't think I can give it more than 2 stars, just because I have no idea if it'll actually see play, but the card design is so cool that I have to give it at least 2 stars there. And then the main Thunderstorm synergy that everybody was hyping up before Otherworld Dreams got banned. Silent Mermaid is a 2-will 6/6 mermaid, so the stats are already premium. And as long as the weather is Thunderstorm, your opponent cannot play cards during your turn. Big thing here is that most of the time you're making the weather Thunderstorm on your turn. So she already synergizes with that. You don't even have to worry about your opponent playing cards on their turn. But she's able to stop your stuff from getting cancelled. She's able to stop your stuff from getting killed by battle spells, removal spells, anything with quick cast. Your opponent just cannot play on your turn. It shuts down quick cast. And I think that's such a powerful tool, especially for like a control-oriented Shayla build. Silent Mermaid is definitely a very powerful card. Definitely probably one of the better mermaids we have. Giving it 4 stars for that. Small Whale. It's got water breathing, reverse fire breathing. It gets plus 200 defense until end of turn, and it's a 1 will 300/300. 1 star. Soak Panda. This card I was kind of debating on 1 or 2 stars. As long as if you're playing Shayla, Soak Panda is a 1 mana 500/500. As long as weather's rain, and then when you start making a Thunderstorm, it's a 7/5. But I think that it's just like, because it's a 1/5 most of the time on your opponent's turn, because it doesn't really have that much great synergy other than just being a bigger beat stick, I don't think it'll see much play. So 1 star. Thundercall! If the weather's rain, the weather becomes Thunderstorm until end of turn, draw a card. This is kind of like Weather Change Rain that Shayla already had. Weather Change Rain was kind of a weak card anyway. This card is no different, but it does let you draw a card along with it, which is pretty cool. So, honestly, it probably won't see much play. The electricity counters are just better. 1 star. Thunderwave. This is another one of those weird conditional cards. It's 2 will, quick cast chant, return target non-magic stone, non-J ruler entity to its owner's hand. That includes additions, resonators for Galley if you're playing in Wanderer. And if it's a Thunderstorm, you draw 2 cards. That's hella weird. This card, the most play it'll see is probably on your own turn when you're trying to really amass those electricity counters with Shayla. But it's probably better on your opponent's turn because you want to return their thing, and then it's a very strange card. There'll be a lot of tech use for it, but honestly, it's a ton of value, so much tempo gain, so much advantage gain. 3 stars. Thunderstorm is a 5 mana quick cast spell that says return all resonators to their owner's hands. That's already pretty decent, especially being quick cast, but if the weather's Thunderstorm, their owners put them on the bottom of their decks in any order instead, so you might just be able to just put your opponent's stuff right back on the bottom there without having to worry about it later. Thunderstorm's a cool card. It seems a little expensive, and because it's quick cast, it can get fairer spelled, I guess. Either way, the card's pretty cool. 2 stars. Treachery! This is the IU spell that's kind of weak. So, for 3 will, your J resonators you control gain plus 200 attack and precision until end of turn. That's pretty cool because you can use that to clear a board. And you prevent all damage that be dealt to J resonators you control by J resonators your opponent controls until end of turn. So basically it's just like a clearing card, but at the same time it's normally better just to play like an actual, board clear spell or like a big damage spell. So I don't think Treachery is that great. You need a board to get it to actually be used. So, 1 star, unfortunately. Witch's Shadow is Were-Rabbit support. It's weird. You search your deck for a Were-Rabbit with total cost 3 or less, or a Water Resonator with total cost 2 or less, and put them into the field. Then you shuffle your deck. So it's kind of like a Kaguya's Moving Butterfly exclusively for Water Resonators, or a Were-Rabbit Searcher. And I don't think there are enough good Were-Rabbits to make it work. 1 star. That's all for blue. Blue's Thunderstorm support was fantastic. I really like what they're doing with it, and the fact that they're kind of giving multiple options to go in from control. You can go in from aggro. You've got a lot of different things to do with certain cards in it. Mermaid synergy, just lightning, beast, dragon synergy. There's a lot going on there. Oh, alright. Gonna need a lot of breath for this one. Moving on to green. Back to Force of Wind, of course. The first card we have here is Approaching the Truth. Approaching the Truth is a 1 green chant, also a story, which actually kind of goes into why it's a 2-star card. It's got Quick Cast. You look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put any number of them on top of your deck in any order. Then you put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order and draw a card. So it's delayed. It's, you know, top of your deck fixing. It's kind of like that Were-Rabbit we saw where I gave it 1 star, but this one allows you to look at the top 2, choose the order, choose if you even want to keep any of them, and then be able to draw after that as well. And it's a quick cast card, and it's story, so you can use it with Scheherazade, who you'll see later. The card's got a lot of versatility there, so I give it 2 stars. I think it's a one-of in the Scheherazade extra deck, but I don't think it's a card that you really want to be main decking. Gleaning Doll. This is the first of the doll support we see for Scheherazade. Unfortunately, it's not the best one. It's a 3-mana 7/8. Stats are meh. When it enters the field, you destroy target non-magic stone, non-J Resonator entity. That's pretty much exclusively additions and regalia in Wanderer. And if you do, maybe you may flip a card in your extra deck face down. The extra deck cards will go over with Scheherazade, but this basically just lets you reuse cards that you've set aside. Card's a little bit too linear, I think. 1 star. Doll Audience. It's a 2-mana 6/6 doll, another one of the Scheherazade dolls. When it enters the field, target Resonator gains +2/+2 until end of turn. It's super low impact, won't see any play, 1 star. Enormous Effigy, another doll. This one's a 5-drop 13/13. We saw that stat line on the dinosaur from before. When a Resonator deals damage to this card, destroy that Resonator. It's got Death Touch, even though it's a 13 attack Resonator. 1 star. Ah, cool. A good card that synergizes with the Scheherazade. Evil Genie is a 3-will 700/700. That's a spirit, which is cool. And then it has 3 effects based on how many cards in your extra deck you've revealed. Again, we'll go over all that when we see Scheherazade later. But the first one is that if you have 3 cards revealed, that's Legend 3. When he enters the field, your opponent discards a card. Pretty good. Your opponent chooses it though, so eh. Legend 4, when this card enters the field, your opponent loses 400 life. Cool. And Legend 5, when this card enters the field, your opponent banishes a Resonator. So it's one-sided, non-targeting effects that diminish your opponent's value, which is great. Evil Genie is just kind of like a built-in value machine. Unfortunately, it does take a lot for it to actually get moving and get like its effects going, so unfortunately I can only give it 2 stars. Same thing kind of applies to Intervention of Reality. Again, it's got those legend effects. It's a quick cast spell, 1 cost. Legend 1 is that target J Resonator gains +6/+6 until end of turn. That's an effect that we've seen on some guild support, Winds of Vitality, Evolution of Limits. Seeing that as a conditional effect kind of sucks, but it's got extra stuff built in, so we give it benefit of the doubt. Legend 3 means you destroy target addition. That's pretty cool. Free addition removal is always nice, tacked on to buffs. And then Legend 5, if you have all 5 cards from your extra deck revealed, you search your deck for a Resonator, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. That's a very powerful effect, so this card's kind of like the thing that you want to ramp up into if you can. I think that's a little bit low impact until you get to 5 cards revealed, so 2 stars, but it's definitely something that I could see a little bit of a build around. First, another one of the story chants. Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid. I wonder who this is trying to hurt. It's a 1-will chant, again a story, so you can use this in your extra deck with Scheherazade. And you choose one. Either cancel target fire chant spell, so if your opponent's trying to like burn you out with Burn to Cinders or something, you just cancel it. whatever, who cares? The other effect is that you remove all counters from your opponent's J ruler. That is not exclusive to +1/+1 counters. That's any kind of counter, magic counter, mana counter, strength counter, gale protection counters, is that favors? Either way, this card is anti-counter, which is pretty rad because we haven't seen a lot of counter interaction cards before, but this card absolutely kills the counter mechanics. So we'll see how effective Scheherazade is, and we'll see if she'll actually have a place for this card. This card will probably just find its way into the sideboards for anybody splashing green, so I give 3 stars for that. Another one of the 5-star cards we have, Lorite 7 Luminaries Astrologian. Is that a word? Either way, it's a 1/will, 100/200 elf. Of course, it's an elf with quick cast. When this card enters the field, cancels target activate or automatic ability your opponent controls. Okay. Second part of the effect, you remove 3 spirit magics in your graveyard from the game. Put this card from your graveyard into your hand. So, Lorite is insane. Lorite, first of all, has quick cast and is a 1 green cancel, essentially. It only cancels activated automatic abilities your opponent controls, but that's fine, because almost every effect in the game that matters is automatic or activate. Not only is that insane, but also it stops J rulers too, and additions? It's really weird. It's bizarre. Big things that it cancels from J rulers are favor getting a elf out of the deck, it's Shadow's drawing a card, I guess, whatever. But like any enter effect that a J ruler has that like makes them worth playing, God's Arts you can cancel with this. They won't be able to play the God's Art again. It's just like there's so much insane value built into Lorite, and then he has recursion, because of course he has recursion. It's insane. Wow, Lorite is by far one of the best cards in the set. But unfortunately, he's not the only green card that we have in this 5-star category, so watch out for this thing, it's going to be insane. Next up on this, we have Lorite's Deletion Magic. Deletion Magic is like a weird, scaled Wall of Wind. It's like a pseudo Wall of Wind. It's kind of a bizarre card. So it's 1 will and X. It's also a Spirit Magic, which is great. With Quick Cast, and you cancel target spell unless your opponent pays X. What that means is that if you pay green and 1 for it, it's 2 will, and your opponent can pay 1 to stop it from canceling their spell. With Spirit Magics, though, you can use elementals in your grave with Gil, pull them out of that, and then be able to like add those into the X cost. It's a very strange card. I think it sees a lot of really good play in Gil, but I don't think it'll see as much play in other decks. For that, I gave it 2 stars. It's interesting. It's definitely an interesting card, and I think that people are going to experiment with it a little bit, which is cool. Also on the list of Spirit Magic cancels, we have Lorite's Wind. Wind is really cool because it's a defensive cancel instead of like an offensive cancel. You cancel target chance spell targeting you or a J Resonator you control, and it's just a flat 2 green will. And it's a Spirit Magic, so again, Gil support. If you need to defend your Resonators as they're trying to stick on the board, Lorite's Wind does that. It's a pretty cool card. So hopefully you see some people trying out a little more defensive green instead of just trying to blast people in the face. Next up on the list here is Leaf Guardsman. If you remember old like Lapis Alice Cluster Fox decks, and if you remember Protector of the World Tree, this card is basically that. Leaf Guardsman is that when it's put into a graveyard, it's a 3/7 for 2 green. When it's put into the graveyard, you search your deck for a card named Leaf Guardsman, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So searches for copies of itself, really good with destruction synergy, really good with effects that banish cards. Definitely a good choice if you're trying to hold out like that. So 2 stars. Leaf Reflector, if you guys remember Volga, this is a bigger, beefier, not as good Volga. Leaf Reflector is a 4 will, 1000/1000, stats are fine. And whenever a chant deals damage to this card does that much damage to your opponent. The fact that it's exclusive to chants kind of sucks, just because old Volga would do that with like Resonator damage too, which is pretty crazy. and if there's a chant that's being targeted at the Leaf Reflector that doesn't, you know, deal damage, it just destroys, doesn't do anything. Unfortunately, Leaf Reflector is just a little bit too slow. 1 star. Leaf Steward is a 2-will 6/6 that when you can tap it to make something an elemental in your grave. Basically, you tap it to do nothing, essentially, except have mild synergy with Gil, but if you're playing Gil, you're probably already playing a ton of elementals, and you don't need to just remove another thing from the grave. 1 star. Mill Page. This card's cool. It's a 3-will. When it enters the field, remove target resonator from the game, so kind of on par with, if you remember, Swirling Demon Dimension, the quick cast spell that Gil had, where it's 3-will to remove something from the game at quick cast speed. This is kind of that without having to go into multiple colors. Again, that removal is permanent, and as long as there is a card removed in any removed area that was removed by that card, by a Mill Page, your opponent can't play cards with this that share a name with that card. So if you can target something down, remove it, and you're like, yeah, this card is a problem for me to deal with, you can't play any more of them, by the way, Mill Page just does that. So, really strong card. I give it 3 stars just for the fact that it's one of the few preventative mechanics we have in the game, which is great, because we don't have a lot of things that can prevent stuff like the way that this one does. Next up on the list is Patrolling Guard Doll. Hey look, another doll support card. Unfortunately, it's a bad doll support card. 3-will 8/8. If you have 2 cards removed from your extra deck revealed, it's a 11/11 1 star. Puppet Maker, though, is probably one of the only cards I think would actually make dolls somewhat relevant. It's a 2-green 6/6 that whenever a doll enters the field under your control, you draw a card, so it's got good stat line, it's got an extra draw effect, and if you have 3 cards revealed from your extra deck, your dolls get +2/+2. That's not too bad. If the card itself was a doll, that'd be kind of cool, but unfortunately it's a wizard. But it's not that bad of a support card. 2 stars. Take a breath. Rachel the Ancient Library Researcher is a 3-will 7/7 and is by far, undisputably, the best card in the set. And probably the best card that's been printed in Reiya Cluster so far, with the second contender being Otherworld Dreams. Rachel herself is again, the 3-will 7/7 human. When she enters the field, you look at the top 3 cards of target player's deck. That's you or your opponent. Put any number of them into their owner's graveyard, and the rest on top of their owner's deck in any order. So you can either mill your opponent 3, mill yourself 3, check your draws and make sure your draws are good, or check your opponent's draws and make sure your opponent's draws are terrible. That's insane. The amount of information you get, the fact that you can screw somebody up for 3 turns if they have a bad hand is unreal. This card synergizes with discard mechanics, being able to know their hand, know what will help them going forward, looking at the top 3 cards and being like, oh hey, that can help you, let's take that out and put that useless card right there on top. Perfect. The amount of information and knowledge you get from that is insane. And then when she leaves the field, that's not when she's put into the grave, when she leaves the field in any way, put into the hand, removed from the game, anywhere, you search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Because you're searching for a card and not a specific card, you don't have to show it to your opponent. Your opponent will normally have no information, and you will have all the information in the world when you're using Rachel. Last very important fact is that the combination that we've been seeing everybody talk about has been Rachel Lumia, where Rachel will attack, well, Rachel will be played, look at the top 3, make sure that she can't get destroyed during that turn because you're looking at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and you're going to take anything that's hurtful to you, put that into your hand, and then you swing with her, Lumia's effect activates, you flicker her outside the field and put her back into the field unrested, recovered. Because she left the field through Lumia's effect, you search your deck for a card, she comes back into the field, you get her enter effect again. It's an insane amount of value, it's an insane amount of advantage, knowledge, just everything good. So, Rachel is easily the best card from the entire set, hands down, like, no questions asked. Keep an eye out for this thing. Lumia Rachel is going to be a thing. If anything happens to happen next time a set comes out, and if this card is as good as everybody thinks, either Lumia or Rachel is going to get some kind of banning, because that's too much. Next up on the list, we have another one of the story cards, Scarlet's Agony. This one's really cool, actually. It's a quick cast chant, again, that removes target attacking J Resonator from battle, and you draw a card. What that means, because a lot of people were saying, like, oh, does it leave the field, come back in? That's so weird. Basically, removing something from battle means that while it's in the battling step, you know, it's attacking, something might be blocking. While that's happening, you just play Scarlet's Agony, target it, and say, nope, you're out of the battle. A battle does not continue. And you draw a card. So it's a very, very good anti-aggressive card that Scheherazade can, like, double up and use, and it's a draw card. So there's tons of synergy there. Just a very, very cool card. Definitely has a place in Scheherazade, 3 stars. Scheherazade's Marionette is probably the only doll that you want to see in your hand, to say the least. It's not a very good card. It's a 2-will 500/500 that just draws a card when it enters the grave. That's not a very interesting effect, but the fact that you'll see in Scheherazade that she gives dolls quick cast, having something that you can just play from your hand and block with and draw a card that replaces itself is actually a really good synergy that most people don't even look at when they think of Scheherazade. They just think of this story chance. Dolls having quick cast is a huge benefactor, especially for the Marionette. So I can see this being the one doll that you want to see in your opening hand when you're playing her. Other than that, once you play in any other decks, 3 stars for its synergy with Sherry. Secluded Village Elf is terrible. It's a big, beefy Sacred Elf. 3-will 7/7 with Barrier that produces green. Barrier barely does anything because you're tapping it anyway, so things going to attack it. Doesn't really help much. Mana Acceleration past turn 3 really doesn't matter unless you're trying to Pharaoh's Command, I guess. You can tell how much they forgot about this card because they misspelled Ciel's name in the flavor text, and because Force Wolf Co. forgot about it, so will you. 1 star. Shifting Minstrel. It's a 1-mana 3/3 that when you put something out of your extra deck, it gains +2/+2. 1-mana 5/5s. 1 star. Small Flatterer. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, already gets minus points from me. Reveal a Resonator and another Resonator with a race the first does not share from among them. So, anti-tribal synergy. If you do, put them into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Example, if you reveal a Were-Rabbit Resonator and a Were-Rabbit Soul, then you put them into your hand. This card's just kind of like a bad version of Ancient Knowledge. 1 star. Here's the Lady of the Hour. Alright, Scheherazade. Speaker of Eternal Night, Scheherazade of the Catastrophic Nights. This card introduced 2 new mechanics into the game, as well as introducing the doll archetype and doll synergy. So, first things first, she Judgments for 3. That's 1 green, 1 void. She energizes for both green and black, of course, because her backside is black. She has Grimoire 5. What that means is that at the beginning of the game, you make an extra deck of 5 cards. Well, you have an extra deck of 5 cards, only with story chants. And those story chants can be played with the following effect. So just know that when you're playing Speaker, you have an extra deck along with you. Again, dolls in your hand gain quick cast. I mentioned that with the Marionette. That's a really cool ability. It'd be better if they're better dolls, but you can't make dolls that are too good when you can just quick cast them all in. And you can pay 0. Here's the effect. Reveal a face down card from your extra deck and keep it revealed until the end of the game. You may copy that card. If you do, you may play the copy, but you have to pay its cost, and you can only play that once per turn. If I understand correctly, once you flip over a card, you can copy that effect, but you can only copy it once, because this effect only happens once on the face down card, which is why that one card said they don't flip things face down. I believe that's correct. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But again, once you start flipping those over, you'll start seeing some extra effects on the backside. Scheherazade's flip side has 1000 attack, 1000 defense, and flying. Keeps that whole dolls in your hand can quick cast effect. When she enters the field, you can put a doll from your grave into the field. So if you're like discarding your own dolls to keep them going, if you had that one Marionette that is sent to the graveyard, you can just toss it back into the field, get extra draws out of it. That's pretty cool. She has 3 legend effects. The first one is Legend 3. When this card enters the field, put target non-magic stone non-J ruler entity your opponent controls on top of its owner's deck. So you can toss a Resonator in addition right back on top, set it and forget it. And then Legend 5 is that when she enters the field, you search your deck for a doll and put it into your field. Then shuffle your deck. Yep, I got that right. So we saw that enormous effigy before. That's probably the biggest thing that you can get out of that effect. So normally you're going to want to play like maybe one of those just for the stat value. If you happen to have it in your hand, run discard mechanics so you can pull it out of your grave with the other Scheherazade effect. So there's a lot of synergy there. Scheherazade's got a lot of cool effects there. Like if you saw, the stories are very anti-meta stories. So on the front side you get a lot of really cool effects with that. On her backside, you just get a ton of value with it. A lot of doll value too, which is cool. Because the dolls probably won't see too much play just because they're not very good. But if anything's going to make them good, it's going to be these cheat them into the field effects. So we give Scheherazade 3 stars for that. She's probably going to be like a really, really weird anti-meta tech ruler. But she's definitely matchup dependent. Next up on the list, Story Listener Eva. This is a doll, and she gains +1/+1 for each card revealed in your extra deck. Again, you're going to be revealing things in your extra deck as you need them, so it's not like the point of the game to go through your extra deck. The point of the game is to control your opponent out a little bit and then use them when necessary. Eva doesn't do that, so 1 star. Who does that is Story Speaker Eve, actually. Eve is a 4-will 6/6 that when he enters the field, you spin something to the bottom of your opponent's deck with a total cost X or less, where X is the number of cards you revealed from your extra deck. That's actually a fantastic ability, especially if you've revealed all 5, flipped your Scheherazade, and brought Eve out of the deck with all 5 cards revealed from your extra deck. Once that happens, Scheherazade spins something to the top of their deck, Eve takes something that costs 5 or less, puts it on the bottom of their deck. Synergy, right there. Again, 4 mana for a 6/6 is pretty awful, so I can't go higher than a 2 star on him. And again, the dolls are just really weak as a whole, so again, just 2 stars, but Eve is probably one of the better dolls along with the Marionette. The Ancient Library, 2-will, draw a card. That's weak. And then Wind Chance you control unknown everywhere gains Spirit Magic in addition to their other subtypes. So this is definitely geared towards guild players, obviously, because Spirit Magics. But honestly, the Spirit Magics you're already playing are probably just a little better than wanting to sink the mana into this. So I do not see this card seeing any play. 1 star. The Mighty Leaf Elder, 2-will, 5/7. Stats are cool. Other Resonators you control with Leaf in the names gain +2/+2. That's a weak card. 1 star. The Puppet's Last Days. This is a card that a lot of people are writing off because the dolls kind of suck as a whole, but at the same time, it's doll banishment, which means that it synergizes with the Marionette's draw effect. It's a story, so you can play it along with Scheherazade and just gain value out of it. Its quick cast ability to destroy a Resonator. That's still pretty good. I can see this card if Marionette and Scheherazade become 2 things that you tend to run in the deck. Puppet's Last Days will definitely be a staple card for your, for your extra deck that you make, but really won't be much else. 2 stars. And then I believe this is the last story we have here. Unanswered Mermaid Prayers. The quick cast effect with the story. Until end of turn, your opponent's weather is clear and cannot change. This card's dopey. This card's really, really dumb, actually. Yeah, basically it's a quick cast card that makes Rain and Thunderstorm nullified and makes you unable to change it back. Again, it's a story chance, so you'll use it once, really. Like, this will not see play outside of the extra deck, and it might even be a sideboard for the extra deck because of the fact that not everybody's going to be running weather effects. Because of that, I can only do 3 stars, but it's such targeted hate for Shayla. It's really dumb. 3 stars. And that's everything for green. Green got probably the 2 best cards in the entire set. Rachel's gonna be insane. Lorite's amazing. And then Scheherazade is really cool. Gets a lot of really good extra little effects with her. So I definitely expect to see the the trend of Force of Wind continue. So get ready for that. So next on the list are the black cards, the darkness cards, and I'm introducing a new keyword in Null. Null is actually a keyword that activates when your hand is empty. So definitely synergizes with discard mechanics, self-discard especially, and the first one we have here is terrible. Black Fang Tyrannosaurus is a 6-will 1000/1000. Those stats are terrible. But if your hand is empty, it's 2000/2000 with precision and pierce, which is going to get removed. It's too slow. 1 star. Next. Black Star, Blaze of Thieves Gang Leader. This card is super rad, actually. First of all, he's a 3-will Dark Panda, so we don't really see much Panda support. Whenever this card deals damage to your opponent, they discard a card at random. That's great, because random discard is way better than, you know, your opponent choosing what they discard. You can banish a light gem to give him flying. That's already great because he synergizes with Tigris. When he enters the board, he already gets the light gem. And you can banish a fire gem for him to gain swiftness until end of turn, which is also really, really good. So, Black Star is definitely a card that you could see in a more heavily aggressive Panda deck, so 2 stars on him. It's really solid. Black Tears. It's another story, actually. It's one of the dark stories that we've gotten. And this is a 2-will story. It's not a quick cast one, but that's fine. And the effect is to destroy all resonators with total cost 1 or less. That's fantastic, because 1 or less also includes tokens, and all inverse resonators, because inverse resonators count as 0 cost on their backsides. So Black Tears definitely has a place in the current metagame with the amount of tokens in inverse we're going to see. So definitely keep an eye out for this one. It's fantastic. 3 stars. Blackwing Dinosaur. 2-will 8/6 with flying. Sounds pretty good until you realize that it gains -100 attack for each card in your hand. It's pack filler. 1 star. Blaze of Thieves Gang Underling. This is a kind of a strange synergy card with Blaze of Thieves. But it is a 2-will 6/6, so the stats are pretty good. And when it enters the field, each player discards a card. Now both players choose which card they discard, which is totally fine. Symmetrical discard effects are pretty interesting, especially because you can choose like a card that you want in the grave, and your opponent's like, oh, I was planning on using a bunch of these cards, but I guess I gotta discard 1. So you can't mess up the game plan, which is nice. Other than that, the card's pretty average. 2 stars. Could see some play. Bloodsucking Butler is a 3-will 7/7. Stats are a little weak, but you get to put a mystery counter in your J rule by tapping him, so that's good for counter manipulation. And you can remove a mystery counter to give target J Resonator -2/2 until end of turn. The fact that it's target J Resonator is fantastic, because Reiya normally struggles against J rulers because her tap destroy something by removing a mystery counter only affects Resonators. So Bloodsucking Butler is a really good alternative way to deal with those J rulers. And even just to kind of survive and make favorable trades, you could use your mystery counters just as -2/2s whenever you need them. So the card's pretty interesting. Could see some play in the Reiya decks, so I give it 2 stars. Grumbling Majin is the only Wicked Spirit we see out of the set, actually. And it's not a good one. It's 4-will 900/900. When it's put into a grave in the field, your opponent discards a card. They choose which card to discard. It's not random. It's a very expensive card that does nothing until it dies. 1 star. Other way. Dark Elf Gravekeeper is a 1-will 400/300 Dark Elf, and when it enters the field, you search your deck for a Dark Elf and put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your deck. This is probably one of the best designed synergy cards we could have seen for Dark Elves. Not only for this set, but for previous sets with them. Obviously, the first thing we think of when we see Dark Elves, we think of Freyla, because we're putting a Dark Elf in the grave. Freyla at the end of the turn will pay 300 of our life, will deal 300 damage to us, to add back that Dark Elf that we just added. So it's essentially a 1-mana 4/3 search for a Dark Elf, which is fantastic on paper. And then the last bit of it is that there are actually effects in this current set that are affected by how many Dark Elves you have in the grave, but then also they have Dark Elf removal synergy. So it also works with self-contained with this deck, with this set. Because of that, I give it 2 stars. It's a very interesting and probably a very well-made card. I just don't see how good Dark Elves will be. So that remains to be seen. Dark Impact is really, really weird. First of all, it's a 4-mana destroy target resonator. That's 2 mana more than you should be playing for resonator destruction. It doesn't have quick cast, but if you do destroy a resonator with it, you can put a dinosaur from your hand to the field without restriction, so it could be literally any dinosaur. That on its own might be a pretty solid card, but I think too many things have to go right for this card to be the best it can be. So unfortunately, I think the only highest I can go is 1 star. Also, quick note that that 1-star rating was made before Otherworld Dreams got banned. Now that Otherworld Dreams is banned, the chance this goes off is much higher, which is great. So this could be like a 1.5 to 2-star card, but I still think it's a fairly low impact card, and it's not something you're going to want to wait till turn 4 to really try and pull off. Next up we have Dark Riding Hood, Messenger of Truth. Also Inverted Red Riding Hood, Recovered Hope. This is the first card we see that flips from dark to a different attribute. This time it's green. Dark Riding Hood especially is a dark 600/600 fairy tale, but instead of inverting when you do Judgment, you remove a mystery counter in order to invert it. So it's pretty much almost exclusively for Reiya, unless you have other mystery counter gaining effects with like other rulers. But if you're playing Reiya, she becomes an 800/800 with barrier from fire and dark. Probably two of the most seen destruction spells and disruption spells. So Red Riding Hood having that ability is fantastic. She's a Fairy Tail inverse, so she has Fairy Tail synergy too. Yeah, 3 stars. She's just kind of good. And now for the worst story chant we have. Disaster at Sasari Palace is a 3-will dark quick cast story that destroys a light resonator and your opponent banishes a gem, which means they choose which one. If you're trying to hate on pandas, you don't really need to because they're already a little weak, but 3-will to destroy a very specific resonator type and just remove a gem? It's way too linear for how high costed it is. 1 star. Embrace of Darkness is actually a little bit better. It's a 2-will chant with quick cast that destroys target resonator with total cost 3 or less. So that's much less linear. It definitely hits a lot of really relevant things in the metagame right now. Most powerful cards are 3 or less unless they have a big enter effect, and if they have a big enter effect, it doesn't really matter if you destroy them or not, because by that point the game's probably been decided. But it's a good removal card. It's a high value, so I give that a 2-star card. Evil Elemental Uprising is insane. This is easily the best story we saw, just because obviously removing all cards in your opponent's graveyard doesn't seem like a very, high impact effect. It doesn't affect the board, doesn't really do much else, but the fact that not only is it just usable with Scheherazade whenever you need it, players can't chase to it. Let me make that clear. You cannot respond to Evil Elemental Uprising when it's played. That is insane. Like, if you remember some of the other cards we've had where players can't chase to them, Flames of Outerworld was a crazy card that just dealt 800 damage to a J Resonator. Set it and forget it. Your opponent can't even respond with anything. Black Moonbeam was a cancer on this game for a long time. Players cannot chase to this card effects are just, it's so difficult to balance them. But I think this is probably one of the best ones in terms of balance that we've seen. Because again, it's not like a total board swing, but it does negatively affect anyone who's based on the graveyard, and who's based on graveyard effects of cards coming back. Like, Demonic Dead with this card in the game is useless. 100% useless. You cannot chase your Demonic Deads to Evil Elemental Uprising. Yeah, 4 stars on that thing. It's crazy. Final Words is terrible. It's worse than a Vengolf 2 card. There was a card in Vengolf 2 that, for 4 mana, said destroy target J Resonator, and was an instant back then before Quick Cast became a thing. Final Words is just worse. 1 star. Grim of the Crimson Moon. This card is awesome. Grim is actually one of the very few cards we see that actually has the ability to take on imperishable J Rulers, aside from the separation that we saw earlier. On the first side, he's a 3-will 7/7 Fairy Tail Vampire with Flying and Barrier. Those are really crazy things to have. Barrier from light and dark. pretty much protects him from almost every good removal card we have currently, except for like Gale Force. When he enters the field, you reveal any number of Fairy Tales from your hand. He gets a +1/+1 counter for each one revealed this way. Not sure how many Fairy Tales you're going to have, but if you have any, he gets an extra little bit of strength on him. It's cool. When he attacks, you put 2 mystery counters on your J-Ruler. That obviously is really helpful for Reiya because it helps ramp her up. But if Reiya is not your J-Ruler, he actually fuels his judgment. His invert. Because whenever you do judgment of a ruler, you remove I can't speak today. 2 mystery counters from your J-Ruler, and if you do, invert him. So you need to have those mystery counters in order to get to this backside, which is Grim Hope from the Future, who is crazy strong. This is 1,000 for the flip. Still retains that flying and that barrier from light and dark, which is great. When he inverts, you give target non-magic stone entity. Let me make that clear. Non-magic stone entity, that includes Resonators, J-Rulers, and additions. It loses Imperishable, and this card cannot be destroyed. So it also stops Imperishable, and it stops can't be destroyed. It stops Fox, IU, Scarlet, who we'll see later, Imul. It stops anything that has Imperishable. But it is a targeting effect, so you need to make sure you watch out for barrier. And then you destroy it, of course, along with that. And also, cards in your opponent's graveyard lose all abilities. So anything that has like a grave effect that revives it, that allows it to banish itself for effects, they're done. They're gone. It's crazy. Grim is a lot of value rolled into one thing. It's a very specific way to get him out, which definitely can be a little slow if you're not playing Reiya. But at the same time, having the ability to just play him out and then get such an insanely powerful backside is really high tempo. So 3 stars on him. Definitely great card design. Heavenly Fruit is the card that people have been talking about a lot for especially players who played in Grim that know how powerful Necronomicon was. Heavenly Fruit was a little worse than that. It's a 1-mana chant where you discard your hand, you may play Resonators from your graveyard this turn, and if a card will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, you're moved from the game instead. So, same thing that Necronomicon did, where you discard your hand, you can play Resonators from your grave. The only problem is that Necronomicon was a addition, so it stayed on the board and you got to keep using that effect. Heavenly Fruit is only good on the turn you use it, unfortunately, which means that once you play Heavenly Wind, you're very susceptible to Severing Winds. Unfortunate. So I can only give this card about a 2-star card. Once Severing rotates out, though, Heavenly Fruit is probably going to be pretty insane. So again, 2 stars for that. Kurosaurus is a 1-will 300/300 dinosaur. Stats are pretty meh. Does it have a good effect? No. If your hand is empty, he's a 6/6 with precision. 1 star. Pack filler. I mentioned before about the Dark Elf synergy. Lily the Last Flower is that synergy. When this card enters the field, you can target a Resonator your opponent controls, and it gains -2/-2 for each Dark Elf in your graveyard until end of turn. So, unfortunately, Lily actually does not synergize with Freyla very well, just because, you know, Freyla adds things back to your hand at the end of the turn, deals damage. If you're running like a mass grave manipulation Dark Elf deck, where you just kind of mass them in to use Lily for the most power, you definitely can do that, because -2/-2 for each Dark Elf multiplied by a lot of Dark Elves gets big fast. Like, she's a lot of removal, so that's pretty cool. And her second effect is that you remove a Dark Elf in your graveyard from the game, and you put a +1/+1 counter on her, and she gains Drain until end of the turn. So, again, this is not once per turn. If you have like a grave of 10 Dark Elves, you can make her a 15/15 and give -2000, -2000 to something. So she's great in the late game. Gaining Drain is pretty cool because you can get right back into the game. That part actually synergizes with Freyla, though, because Freyla gives you the damage, and then Lily just gets it back for you with Drain. So, cool little synergies there. There's a lot of tempo. There's a lot of potential for Lily to be strong. So I can't go any lower than 2 stars. Again, I don't know how strong Dark Elves will be. So if they are strong, hey, all the more power to her. Lily's gonna be fantastic. Lily's Protector is just a little bit too weak. It's 3-will, 7/7. It's a Dark Elf and an Ethereal. I don't know if we've ever seen that race put onto a card, so that's kind of cool. But if she's removed from the grave, target Dark Elf gains barrier until end of turn. Basically just a way to give Lily barrier, drain, and +1/+1. using her effect. Nothing too crazy about that. Liz Protector's a not great card. Kind of one-dimensional, 1 star. Look of Despair is a 3-will champ, obviously. Your opponent discards 2 cards, and if your hand is empty, you discard 3 cards instead. Making your opponent discard 3 is actually kind of insane. Again, it's very situational whether or not you can actually make that happen, but if you do, your opponent loses tons of value, you start controlling the board back. I give this card 2 stars. On its first effect, it's not really that great, but if you get that null going, it's very strong. Lurker in the Null is a 1-will Cthulhu with Death Touch. Whenever it deals damage to a resonator, destroy that resonator. And if your hand is empty, you can pay 2 to put it back from your grave into your hand. We had a Cthulhu with the exact same Death Touch effect, but that also worked on J resonators, and that didn't see any play out of Curse of the Frozen Casket back in Lapis Cluster. So Lurker will probably see no play. 1 star. Null Illusion. It's a 2-will 5/5 Cthulhu. Stats are weak, and if your hand is empty, you draw a card. Conditional draw, tapping it, it's bad. 1 star. Refuse Collector is a card that I kind of mulled over giving either 1 or 2 stars. I eventually decided on 2 because I want to experiment with it. It's whenever a player discards a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it starts off as a 1-mana 3/3. If you start using effects like you'll see coming up Scarlet's effects, any of the null effects, any of the symmetrical discard effects, Refuse Collector can spiral out of control really quickly. That, of course, means only if your opponent leaves it unanswered. And I doubt they'll leave it unanswered, but it's a card I want to experiment with, so I'll give it a 2 star for now. Probably be a 1 star later after I've realized how bad it is in my testing. Revival of the Clan. If you guys remember way back, I mentioned about the Panda Revival spell that puts something from your grave to your hand. Revival of the Clan is kind of that, except you can put 2 Resonators back with the Awakening. Again, it's a 1-mana spell that doesn't do anything on turn 1, and it's just kind of low impact. It doesn't really affect the board, doesn't affect your game state, it's not really a great use of your mystery counters. 1 star. Soul Concentration is a 1-will quick cast champ. That's great. You choose one. You either put 3 mystery counters on your J ruler, that's awesome for Reiya, awesome for a deck that's trying to use Grim, or put 2 +1/+1 counters on a target J resonator you control. So that also goes a long way, because an extra +2/+2 buff at quick cast speed is never a bad thing, obviously. So card's flexible, card knows what it's doing, Reiya's a cutie, 2 stars. Sage Hand Doll. This is one of the bad dolls. The 3-will 6/9. Hey. Whenever a resonator is put into your opponent's grave from a non-removed area, weird, removed from the game, and you gain 200 life. I guess that means it can't loop. Whatever. It's 200 life gain whenever something dies for your opponent, or if they're discarded. But it's 3-will, and the body's not great. 1 star. Here she is. Okay. Here's the Dusk Girl and Scarlet the Crimson Beast. Starting off on the front side, she's a fairy tale. Judgment's for 1, which is great because you see those insane stat lines and all the keywords she has, but you can only Judgment her if you have no cards in your hand, so she kind of comes with her own null. She energizes for both red and black, that's great, and her effect that you can use more than once per turn by paying fire is that you discard a card, and this card deals 500 damage to a resonator. If you discard a dinosaur using that, it's 700 damage instead, so she's got really weird dinosaur synergy for some reason. I'm not complaining, I like dinosaurs, but it just seems kind of out of place with her. And then once you pay that 1, she Judgments into Scarlet the Crimson Beast, which is a 1200 J ruler with Cthulhu, with swiftness, imperishable, precision, and first strike. So all the good combat abilities there, aside from flying, whatever. First clause, damage cannot be prevented. What? It's so weird. It's such a strange ability. Like, an effect that says prevent all damage that will be dealt to something won't trigger. If damage is dealt to something, that damage goes through, like, no matter what. That's a really cool ability to have. It's a really nice way to get around stuff like 0 is a big one. 0 death and taxes is definitely going to suffer a little bit, even though it erases all of the keywords. That's a very strange... That's a really weird interaction between the two of them, but that's cool though. Whenever a J Resonator that was dealt damage by this card this turn is destroyed, recover this card, but that only happens once per turn. So if you kill something with Scarlet's front side, you just recover her and you can just swing again because she still has swiftness and imperishable, and the first strike means that as long as you kill it and it doesn't kill you, well, as long as you kill it, you don't die and you get to recover. And last thing is that she has like a pseudo fire breathing effect where she can pay red to gain plus 200 attack until end of turn. That goes a long way when you're trying to like clear something, you swing at something, it's got like a 1600 defense, your opponent doesn't declare any blockers, and you're like, alright, plus 2, plus 2, plus 200, plus 200, plus 200, I clear it, I swing again, another 16 at your face. So Scarlet definitely goes a long way. She's got a lot of power built into her, a lot of clearing power, a lot of aggressive power, a lot of just power. I don't know how else to say it. Scarlet's just really, really good. I think she's going to see a lot of play as a premier aggressive ruler. Next up here we have Thought Control. Begone Thought. It's a one will chant that your opponent reveals their hand, you choose a card with total cost 3 or less, and they discard that card. If you remember what I mentioned before, where most good cards in the game currently are cost 3 or less, you know why Thought Control is a 4-star card. Being able to just knock something powerful out of your opponent's hand, say like a Rachel out of their hand, oh my god, that's the dream. In fact, you can play this along with stuff like Nameless Mist, Scorn of Dark Alice. There's so much discard right now for black. You can play a full-on control deck. So, this card is just fantastic for that. And the fact that this doesn't have to differentiate between resonators and spells is also fantastic. So, if anything, this is the best turn 1 play you have in almost every matchup. So, Thought Control definitely gets a huge vote in my book. And the last dark card we have to talk about is Voidosaurus. Again, that weird dinosaur synergy with null effects was very interesting. Voidosaurus is a 6-mana 14/14. If you have no cards in your hand, you may pay 4 less to play it. That's pretty crazy. Again, the card doesn't have any big effects. It seems like a mid to late game card, depending on how well you can get your null effects going. But honestly, anything that has the potential to be a 2-mana 14/14 has to get at least 2 stars in my book. I give you the thumbs up there, Voidosaurus. Good job. I want to experiment with you. So that's it for the dark cards. Again, dark got the null mechanic, which is cool. A lot of discard synergy, which I like a lot, because discard effects are probably one of the coolest effects in the game, just because, again, knowing what to pull out of your opponent's hand and when really is a big effect in the game. Somebody just pulled up into somebody's driveway. Yeah, there's just a lot of really cool stuff with regard to that. Hand manipulation is going to be a lot of fun in this current metagame. Moving on to the multicolor stuff, we got some really sick, super rare multicolors that were all revealed. The first one being Null Darkness. It's a 2-will, fire and black, 2-will card with quick cast. Destroy target resonator. So this is essentially the same exact thing as Stoning to Death was back in Reiya Cluster, so we get that back again. But if your hand is empty, you also get to destroy up to 1 target J-Ruler. That's so sick. I love that design factor. Null Darkness just has such great synergy with Nyarlathotep, obviously, being able to just clear things out. Not Nyarlathotep, Scarlet, whatever. Being able to just clear 2 things out, clear out a J-Ruler, Judgment Her, swing at something, clear it, untap, attack something else. There's just so much multi-level play with that. And in just general control decks, Mikage with this card, and I think one of the cards from the Lost Tomes has like 22 mana kill spells. Like, you can just run your opponent out of resource. It's unreal. So, Null Darkness gets a huge vote in my book for being as insanely powerful as it is. 4 stars, guaranteed. Ruin Story is, I think, probably one of the better stories as well in Scheherazade. Definitely not the best, because I think the best one was... I forget which one I said was the best one. But it's definitely one of the better ones. It's the only story that costs 2, I believe. I'll experiment with Scheherazade. Where it's a quick cast where you choose one of the following 4 effects. Your opponent banishes a resonator. Nice. That's the first time we've seen that for 2 without some kind of condition attached to it. You flip over 2 revealed stories in your extra deck, which means you can flip them front ways or back ways, which is cool. Put target resonator from your graveyard into your hand. Again, that's a pretty weak effect, but I guess because it's multifaceted, that can be helpful. or cancel target spell unless your opponent pays 1. So, kind of like a expensive whirlwind that you can play from your extra deck with multi-options. Rune Story is very flexible. I would say probably, well, it is the most flexible story. But I don't think it's super powerful. A lot of people are saying this is like the most powerful story. I think it's high up there, but not as good. But again, it's versatile. It's going to be good for being flipped out of your extra deck, and this will probably actually see play in your main deck because it can flip those stories back over from your extra deck. So, 3 stars. Good card. But not as good as my favorite card from the entire goddamn set. Holy crap, Twins Blades of Hope and Despair and Sword of Fate are unreal. Oh, as a control player, I'm salivating over these cards. They're so good. So, first things first. Twin Blades of Hope and Despair is a quick cast chant for black and white. My favorite colors to play if I can splash them. Target resonator you control gains +6/+6, and target resonator your opponent controls gains -6/-6 until end of turn. Then remove this card inverted from the game. That's a 1200 benefit to your side of the board. That's crazy. For 2 will. Oh, make a phone call. Look at that later. This card is just unreal. And then past that, like, huge quick cast battle buff effect, you get another side to it with relevant effects on it. You flip over into Sword of Fate, which is 4 will, 2 light, 2 dark. Obviously, if you're playing a dark and light control deck, you're playing this thing. You can play it only from your removed area. You choose one. Either you destroy target J Resonator. Again, we mentioned how bad Final Words were, the 5 mana one that does this. In the same set, you got this same effect bundled into a cheaper spell. And then you put that into Twin Blades of Hope and Despair, being a full chant. And then also you get the choice to put a Resonator from total cost 5 or less from the grave into your field. You get a revival effect too. It's so good. This card's like a value bomb. Oh my god, I'm gonna get experimenting beyond control with this card. Mark my words, you're gonna see me playing with this thing 100%. 5 stars in my book. It could be a 4-star card, but I really don't care. It's a 5-star card in my book. Enough gushing. Magic Stone of Hope and Magic Stone of Despair. This is Imul's Stone. On the front side, it's just like a produce light. It doesn't call itself a light Magic Stone, which kind of sucks, but whatever. And whenever you do Judgment of a Ruler, you invert it. And on its inverted side, you get to produce either white or black. Having to wait until you flip over your ruler kind of sucks with this card. I would rather see it have some kind of other condition, I guess, but it makes sense thematically with the card. You get extra effects with it. Helps out with casting this. So, 3 stars. No Magic Stone is crazy good. I love this card. No Magic Stone is basically a pay stone. You get to produce black just by producing black. That's fine. By dealing 200 damage to yourself, you produce red, which actually synergizes with the Majin Dark Elf, which is why that card, which was like a 1-star in our last video, might be like a 2-star or 3-star. It's basically, with this card, it's pay 200, get a 6 mana, a 2 mana 6/6, 1 mana 6/6 with swiftness. And then if your hand is empty, you can tap it and banish it to produce both red and black. So if your hand is empty and you need to just like get yourself back into the game, kill it off, make two colors and just go off. Very versatile, 4 stars there. Speaking Stone for Scheherazade is kind of weak. This is probably my least favorite of the stones. Right now it's the only stone that naturally has barrier, which is great. That's an awesome effect. You tap it to produce green, perfect. Scheherazade's a green ruler. And you produce black, but only to play story chants, which is so... I don't like that, because there are a bunch of like really good dark synergy cards that we want to use with Scheherazade. Tons of discard outlets, tons of control. It does suck. It's only for story chants, and there's no way around that. Again, you don't have to play the stone. You can still play like Killing Stones and obviously Black Silence, which is insane. But once rotation happens, this card's gonna be our only source of black-green. Whew. All right. One last thing to note about Speaking Stone, though. I'm not a big Wanderer player, but I do know that this is the premier stone to be playing in the Arlo OTK because it comes with barrier. It's the only Magic Stone that naturally has it. So keep that in mind if you're an Arlo player in Wanderer, but other than that, this card's 2 stars. Might see a little bit of play, but don't put your hopes in it. And now on to variants. We'll go through these really quickly because I gotta return that phone call. White Sacred Beast, the one that had the really cool Nullify effect, now has Precision. That's bad. 1 star. Mad Skull Acidon, instead of getting Precision when he's null, you get Pierce. Also bad. Small Whale reverses the stats a little bit. 100 attack, 400 defense with Fire Breathing for water. Weird. 1 star. Enormous Effigy. This is actually the only card that gets dramatically better in its variant form out of any card we've seen with variant. The other Enormous Effigy was the one that had Death Touch on it for some reason, even though it's a 13/13. Whatever. Enormous Effigy this time around is a 5-wheel doll. Whenever damage is dealt to you, this card deals that much damage to your opponent. If you're playing Scheherazade and you're trying to cheat out a big doll, this is the one you want to cheat out. This one's fantastic. 3 stars. And Leslie Voidosaurus, instead of costing 4 less, gets Pierce and Precision. Unplayable. 1 star. And that's it. Oh, I didn't change the... I'm stupid. Well, thank you all for watching this review of, not Advent of the Demon King. Thank you for watching our review of Time Spinning Witch. Thank you all for staying with me while I was gushing about my favorite cards, explaining those cards, and give me your thoughts on what you think was the best cards out of the set. Not this one. We're going to go back to the screen because this actually matters. But yeah, absolutely give me your thoughts. Let me know your favorite cards of the set. Spoiler, this one is still mine. Oh my god. I love it. Alright. Honestly, yep, that's it, guys. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. And tell me what you're going to be experimenting with. So, this is Mike from Deep with the Force of Will, signing out.